back to Rewind of the Living Dead. I'm Damon Martin.
And I'm Patrick Kara.
This
Damon,
is
can
not
we shut
A-
up? It's impossible for us to shut up for...
This is not ASMR horror reviews.
God, no. I don't know if you know this, Damon. I have a severe like allergy to whispering. I genuinely hate it. It drives me up it makes my skin crawl. I don't like whispering at all.
So I just totally made your skin crawl by doing that. I don't want to ruin a future category we're gonna have tonight. Will we survive this horror film? I'll tell you ahead of time, no. Because I can't be quiet. I am not a quiet person. I project my voice very loudly. So
I almost changed the category to how will we die in a quiet place? Because I know you and I don't make it. Like, I just know it. We're too loud. We talk way the fuck too much. That is literally what our job is here on Rewind of the Living Dead, is to talk all the time. But Damon, tonight we're talking about the spinoff, A Quiet Place Day One, released in June of 2024, starring Lupita Nyong'o as Samira, Joseph Quinn as Eric, Alex Wolff as Rumen, Jaimon Onsu as Henri, and of course, as you mentioned, written and directed by Michael Sarnowski. Damon, who, if people don't know, directed what you mentioned in the intro, mine and yours, one of our favorite Nicolas Cage movies out there, Pig. If you have not seen Pig, first of all, it's my number one movie of 2019. Amazing movie. Like, truly an amazing movie. And then I think you hadn't seen it yet, and you were like, really? You think this is a great movie? I go, trust me, watch it. And then you were like, yeah, I like Pig. And now Sarnowski gets to give us A Quiet Place Day One.
Yeah, I was a late arriver to Pig, but it ended up being in my top 5. I think it was top 3 for me that year. I have to remember what all was in there. I want to say, was that Dune? Was that?
Yeah, I think Dune? That was Dune as well. So I think you had Dune at number 1.
Yeah, I think I had Dune at number 1, and Pig was number 2 for me. If I'm not mistaken.
Dune was my number 5.
Yeah, so again, we're splitting hairs. Top 5 is like they're all good.
Top 5 is very hallowed ground around here.
Now it's really funny because when Michael Sarnowski signed on to this film, you and I both were kind of like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I'm in, because we loved Pig. Like, we adored that movie. And again, I'm not trying to oversell it, but if you haven't seen Pig, please go see it. It's not a horror movie, but it is strikingly original, haunting, and Nicolas Cage is just unbelievable in that film. So I would just highly recommend it. If you're just a film lover, go see or go rent or go buy or whatever the hell you want to do. Watch Pig. It's amazing. But I remember we talked about it off air when Michael Sarnowski got the movie. We're like, oh my God, like Pig, like he's directing this. What's wild, as I mentioned in the intro though, and I didn't remember this, that Jeff Nichols, who just did The Bike Riders, which is going to probably end up on my top 5 list for 2024, which we both just saw last weekend. We were texting back and forth like crazy how much we loved that movie. Yeah. I'd kind of forgotten he was the original director on this.
I remember hearing that he bowed out because of creative differences, but it really only hit me again when you mentioned it now. I was like, oh, that's right. And Jeff Nichols is out there making The Bike Riders, which is so fucking good. It's one of my favorite movies this year by far. Like, I have a top 3 already for this year, but I know once like November hits, like that could change because boy, they fucking come out swinging in November, December because they want to get their Oscar releases out. But yeah, Jeff Nichols, an incredible filmmaker. Lots of his films are really good. Mud. What's another one? Oh my God. Midnight Special. It's interesting that Jeff Nichols was on their radar to do a spinoff, and Michael Sarnowski being on there as a spinoff for A Quiet Place. But it does make sense to me, Damon, because when I looked at this movie, and we're going to get into what this movie's all about in just a moment here before we spoil anything, but we'll just kind of talk about the movie. The Quiet Place, especially the original with the Emily Blunt and John Krasinski, is a very rare situation. It is a horror drama in the very realist sense. And I'm like, I know we have horror dramas all the time, but usually it's almost like it's more of a period piece. It's more of a thriller. It's more spooky. It's sort of, this is really about the human condition in a very horrific situation, which is, it's so different. It's so very different than a lot of horror out there.
It really is. And I'll be honest, I have a weird relationship with A Quiet Place. I don't want to go too deep into this and make it sound dramatic, but I didn't see A Quiet Place when it first came out. We weren't doing the podcast yet, and I can't remember why I didn't see it in the theater, but I didn't. But then I heard all the buzz about it. Everyone was talking. Maybe I did end up seeing it in the theater, but it was after it had already been out for a few weeks, maybe in a month. And everyone's like, oh my God, Quiet Place, Quiet Place. And then I think maybe I did see it in the theater. And I was like, wow, this is really good. Like, this is really surprising. Like, I was kind of impressed. Didn't see this coming. And now I get what everyone was buzzing about. Quiet Place Part 2 came out. And that was when we were doing the podcast. So we went back and reviewed part 1, then we did part 2. And that was during the pandemic. It was one of the first films kind of coming out of the pandemic was Quiet Place Part 2. That was right when we went back into theaters, like right around that time. We reviewed that, and we both liked it. Good review.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I ever watched Quiet Place Part 2 since that day I saw it in the theater, like whatever it was, like 3 years ago. I've seen Quiet Place a couple of times, but I did not see. Now, again, I want to be clear. I gave it a good review. I liked it, but I just kind of forgot about it. It wasn't one of those movies that stuck with me to the point where I needed to seek it out to watch it again. Now, that's not a bad thing necessarily, but there are some horror films when they're on HBO, Showtime, Stars, whatever cable system you have, whatever premium channel you have, when it's on, I stop. And even if it's on for 10 minutes, I just watch it. Or I buy it. I put it in my physical media collection because I have a physical media collection sitting right behind me. I can't really explain what it is about A Quiet Place to say I liked it, but not enough to really seek it out again. I know that sounds weird. So when Quiet Place Day 1 was coming out, when the buzz first started, and as I mentioned, when Michael Sarnowski ended up taking on the main writing and directing, and you and I become such huge, I mean, that was right after Pig.
Yeah.
I was way in. I was so happy. But movies take a while to make. So by the time the trailers and the buzz started coming about Quiet Place Day 1, my anticipation had gone back down to kind of zero again, where I was, okay, cool. And also, got to be honest, just being completely upfront and forthright here, next week we have Maxine, which is a movie I am very excited about. Mm-hmm. We loved X, and we've said, I have admitted on this podcast, I almost regret our Pearl review because I was kind of middle of the road with that movie.
Yeah, we weren't as kind to it as we actually liked it.
And then rewatching it, I was like, this is actually really good. I'm kind of bummed that I didn't like it better at the time. And then the week after that is Longlegs, which has got to be one of the most buzzy, crazy, exciting horror movies of the year. I've avoided everything possible about that movie with the exception of the trailers that I have not been able to avoid. But I know nothing. Every time I see a review, because I know there's people out there that have seen it, I just scroll right past it. I don't want to know anything else. But I'm super excited about that. So maybe that's it. You know what I mean? Maybe it's like I know that it's like going to a movie this week, but then you got like a big concert next week, and then you got something else big the next week. Yeah, I'm excited, but I'm kind of more excited for that. So maybe all those factors combined for me kind of had me going into A Quiet Place Day 1 thinking, all right, I'm seeing A Quiet Place Day 1. Not bad. Not going in with a negative thought in my head. Just not jumping up and down in excitement. You know, not. We saw Nope when I was in San Diego a couple years ago. We were both like jazzed out of our asses to see that because it's Jordan Peele. We were actually seeing a movie together. All these kind of things were working in our favor. You know that feeling. Mm-hmm. I didn't have that feeling going into this. Coming out though. Mm-hmm. Not to, spoil everything. Coming out, my girlfriend saw it with me, and she's like, so what'd you think? Because it's almost always out of the movies, one of us says to the other, what'd you think? And I said, I was shocked how good that was. Like, how much I enjoyed that. And this one, and again, I don't want to, spoil anything here. Unlike A Quiet Place Part 2, which was good, we reviewed it, and then I kind of forgot about it. Mm-hmm. This one, I get the feeling is going to stick with me more. Kind of like A Quiet Place Part 1 did when I first saw it. So, yeah, that's my little diatribe about, I have a weird relationship with the movie because I've liked every single movie, but none of the movie, it's not a movie that I'm like, ooh, man, I got to see the next one, or ooh, man, I got to see it again. I liked it, watched it, enjoyed it, reviewed it, and then just kind of moved on with my life.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's how I felt about it. Like A Quiet Place Part Two was like, okay, cool, we did it. Like, and it had great actors. I mean, it still had Emily Blunt. It had Jaimon Onsu in it, who's in this movie, and they had Cillian Murphy, who won the Oscar this past year. It's these aren't bad movies. But I was sort of like, I was so excited about Michael Sarnowski, and I was really excited about Lupita Nyong'o, who is like kind of criminally underused. It's kind of insane how little of stuff she's in. And I think she's more of a stage actress anyway. Like I think she prefers that. You don't see her in tons of movies. And I was like, this is cool because these two are a part of this. And I'm sure Joseph Quinn's casting was no mistake. They were like, oh, we're gonna have someone play opposite her. Hey, that Joseph Quinn guy's super popular from Stranger Things. Let's get him. Not a bad call. Like not a bad call on the studio side to go, hey, bring somebody in that's super hot right now. Except it's not right now. Stranger Things, that was like almost 2 years ago now. So it's weird how the energy got sucked out of this thing, and I think it's actually been a really crowded calendar for movies. Like the studios have released kind of like everything they have. There's so many movies coming out. I mean, you and I love the Bike Riders. It's probably barely going to do any business at the box office because it's so crowded. It's sandwiched between all these other things. So things are getting lost in the mix. I'm curious if this gets lost in the mix. It shouldn't. But also, what I'm really curious about, and I was curious while I was watching this movie, but you've already dispelled that particular fear that I had. But I was sitting there watching this. I go, it's going to go one of two ways for Damon. He's either going to love this movie or he's going to be like, fucking artsy fartsy movie that could have just been some drama somewhere else. Didn't need to be in this franchise. But I love that this franchise, they were smart enough to say, if we're going to do another one that has nothing to do with that family, then we might as well step completely outside of what that was and tell you a different story completely. And it's gonna have to wait till spoilers just how different this story is. But the fact that the producers and the studio had the balls to say, fine, we'll do it like this, to me is a big win. And I think like no matter how you like to watch movies, for instance, I know you've been watching the new season of The Bear. I just watched the first 4 episodes because you and I both adore that show. The first episode is almost all just images. Very, very little dialogue. I absolutely loved it. My wife was sitting next to me going, what the fuck is this? Like she was like, are they going to talk at some point? And I go, no, that's not the point of this episode. Here comes artsy fartsy, the art goon, going, no, the point is these images. The point is the way that this thing is moving. And to me, it's that episode of The Bear was like one of my favorite episodes. I go online to see some people were trashing the opening episode and saying, boy, what a pile of shit that was. And then other people are going, that's a triumph. That's a triumph of storytelling. And I feel like maybe A Quiet Place Day One might end up being like that for some people. Clearly not for you and I. Clearly for you and I, we're saying, hey, pause the episode right now, go buy a ticket and go see it if you haven't already. If you didn't go see it opening weekend, go see it now. I went to like a 5:30 showing on a Thursday night and the place was packed. That makes me feel good. I'm a theater person. I want to go to the theater. I want to experience it. I watched it in Dolby, in the Dolby theater, which has incredible sound. You and I saw Nope in the Dolby theater. Really, really impressive way to see a movie, especially a movie like Quiet Place, where sound is a super important part of the storytelling. I want people to have that big theater experience. When you watch stuff at home and your phone is available to you and there's very little dialogue going on, you're going to go, what's even happening? Because I'm scrolling through TikTok, I'm on Instagram, I'm messaging my friend, I'm looking on Pinterest, whatever you're doing, you're halfway in. I'm getting back on that damn soapbox this week, Damon, and I know you're on it with me too. We're squeezed in there together, and we're saying, go to the theater, see A Quiet Place Day One, lock yourself in, experience it, go on the ride. It's different when you do it that way. I know a lot of people like to wait for streaming. They go, I got my home theater system. There's no weirdo next to me fucking snorting and chomping his popcorn and all that shit. When you're locked in, you're locked in, and it changes how you experience a movie. And my younger brother, he goes with me to these all the time. Shout out to Schwink. He caught up on the Quiet Place series because he hadn't watched it. He watched it, and then he came to the theater with me tonight before this recording, and he turned to me and goes, "This is as good as the first. Maybe it's better. I don't know. I really like it." And this is a guy who's not invested in these movies in any way, shape, or form, but he knew a good movie when he saw it, because you get in the theater and you get locked into that experience. Maybe you're a really good at-home TV watcher, but I doubt you are. I really do. I doubt anyone is, really. I try desperately. I'll put my phone in another room if I really need to watch something. But don't wait for the home theater. See this in the movie theater, and it'll be an experience quite unlike any other.
So a couple things what you said right there. So I don't know if you're becoming an influence on me or not, but apparently I'm really starting to enjoy artsy fartsy stuff because I have tickets tomorrow to go see Kinds of Kindness, and I know that movie's going to be whacked out of its mind. I'm super excited to see it. Yorgos Lanthimos, who just did Poor Things. I'm like way excited to see this movie. And also, I did see that first episode of The Bear, and I absolutely fucking loved it. I was sitting there enthralled the entire time. I was on the edge of my seat watching every single second. The music, the way it was shot, it was fucking
perfect.
Brilliant.
Perfect episode.
Great. And also, this is way off, so I'm just throwing this out there because I know you appreciate it, but we're just talking about this. The Bear this season is all streaming in one season. Like, they dropped all the episodes at once. If I'm not, because I didn't start watching The Bear till season 2, so I was late. But if I remember correctly, they were dropping it like old school. Like every week they were dropping a new episode. This year they dropped them all. So I feel like if you watch that first episode, you're like, what the fuck is this? Remember, you're watching it as a whole. This is 10 episodes. Remember, this is one part of a 3 or 4 hour movie or 5 hour movie you're watching. Just to throw that out there. Now, with The Quiet Place Day 1, the other worry I had, and I still have this concern as we're doing this podcast right now, Patrick, saying that I really enjoyed this movie. It was different. It was shot different. It was directed different. It was acted different. The script was different. And yes, the concept is still the same. It's people running from sound-seeking fucking giant aliens.
That's still there.
That's still there. But here's my concern. Here's a little bit of my concern going in there. How do you keep going? Because this is a concept. Let's bring it to a series that we love, mostly, the Alien series, which we still have a couple more movies to go to review. We have one more movie to go, and then we've got Alien Romulus coming out in August, which we will finish before then. Great teaser for that series. When they ran out of ideas with Alien, they just started throwing shit at the wall and said, there's xenomorphs, people will enjoy it. So here's Alien versus Predator. Here's Alien versus Predator Requiem. Here's Alien Covenant. Here's Prometheus. They just started throwing anything out there thinking, this is Alien. People will dig this. They also did it with Terminator, a series that I absolutely adore. Right. I loved the first 2 Terminators. But then it was like, oh, here's Terminator Salvation and Terminator Genesis and Terminator the fuck. It just, they killed it because the concept is pretty simple. Alien, you just think it's aliens. It's the xenomorphs. That's all you need. But guess what, Patrick? As much as we like xenomorphs killing people, you need more than that. And my worry with A Quiet Place, and I'm saying this from now going forward, because you know they're going to do a 4th one. I think they're already in development on Quiet Place Part 3.
I've heard that, yeah.
With John Krasinski, is that this just gets repetitive. And it just gets either ridiculous, like, you know, like literally, like they're going to be like, you know, they're going to be razzling the aliens or some shit. Or it's just going to get ridiculous. Or you're just going to be seeing a bad carbon copy of another one of the movies. That's my fear. And going into A Quiet Place Day 1, yes, I'll admit I wasn't super excited because, again, this is just a series that I enjoy but just kind of forget about. And then part 2 of that is, the concept can get tired. It worried me because this is ultimately an alien invasion story. Alien invasion stories typically go one way, which is aliens invade and they either destroy us or we fight back and destroy them. That is the concept of an alien invasion movie on Earth. Signs, every other alien movie to some extent, that's the story. They invade, we either get defeated or we eventually defeat them, like Independence Day. Right? Like, that's the concept. When a Quiet Place Part 1 comes out, we've already been defeated. We already got our asses kicked. So now we're just living in a world with these fucking aliens. So that is kind of a cool concept right away because we're not battling back. We're just fucked. Quiet Place Part 2 just continues that family story. Again, okay, I'm fine with that. You take this one to New York City, the noisiest city in the world, and there's a great opening, which I know I'm kind of saying this is a spoiler. It doesn't spoil anything, I promise you. But right away when they had this on the screen, I was like, ooh, I kind of dig this. They said New York City, one of the loudest cities on Earth, something to that effect, and they said it operates at 90 decibels, which is basically a continuous scream. That's how loud it is in New York. Now, I love New York City. I know you love New York City. Part of the reason I love New York City is because I enjoy the noise, weirdly. I actually have a bigger problem with quiet than I do with noise. Like, I'm like, give me the fucking subway, give me the fucking pizza stores, give me the traffic, give me the sirens. I like noise. Maybe I'm a fucking weirdo. I'm a city kid. I fully admit it.
Yeah.
I love New York. So with that said, I was like, ooh, that's kind of a cool concept. Because we do. You go to New York, you realize it's loud. So that right there set it off immediately where I was like, okay, this is interesting. Like, they're setting you up right away. And then when the movie gets started, you meet Lupita Nyong'o's character. You eventually meet Joseph Quinn's character. You meet Jaimin Hansu's character. All these different things happen. And I'm not spoiling anything here, but when you meet all these different characters, things kept happening that were different. And the rhythm was different. The story was different. As I already said, I don't want to repeat myself. And by the end of the movie, I walked out saying, okay, yes, the concept was the same. Aliens, sound-seeking aliens, you make a sound, you're fucked. It's not that different than the other two Quiet Place movies. But everything else was different.
Yeah.
And it worked. And again, I will have this same worry going forward that if you don't do what they did in A Quiet Place day one, it can get repetitive, it can get old, and it can get worse. But this one film, day one, worked really well.
Yeah, this is interesting, and it's interesting that you brought up Terminator, and there's one other big franchise that's getting like that. I can't remember what it is. But basically with Terminator, you have a high budget action franchise that really, really lost steam after part 2. I mean, after part 2, name something you love about the sequels.
I can tell you one TV show. The Sarah Connor Chronicles.
Okay, Sarah Connor Chronicles, really which is a kind of a more of an offshoot, but and I know people like that. But I'm talking about the movies, which they spend hundreds of millions of dollars on, and they really try to, like, market them. They just kind of got progressively worse. There was a couple of little course corrections here and there, but not enough to be memorable. 2 great films and then nothing. Alien, 2 great films and then everything else is up for debate. Like, I actually like most of them. I don't hate most of them. So I know you do. I know you hate a lot of those ones after 3. A Quiet Place has a chance here to kind of just go out on top. We have a category for that. Don't you worry. We always do. So we'll get more into that later. But I am fascinated that what we are dealing with is a horror drama. And that's the one thing that actually retains itself from the previous 2 installments of Quiet Place into this, is it's a drama, but it's a drama in a whole other way. Damon, we might as well get into spoilers soon, because I really can't talk about the plot of this movie and why it's so different and unique from the other 2 Quiet Place movies, but it is still very much a drama horror. Can you think of any other drama horrors before we roll into spoilers that are like this?
Not really like this. When you say drama horror, I think of drama thriller, like Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, it's always horror. Thrilling. There's
drama
a little
thriller.
Yeah,
Seven,
there's like
movies like that. Like the thriller. That's like the thriller horror.
There's
and they're
edge.
also drama. Yeah,
but it's those like are usually edgy, and the characters are edgy.
It's hard to do that. It's harder to do that with like an alien story. It really is. Like when you think about it, because I mean, I guess maybe you could call Signs a little bit of a drama horror because you have the family element in there, and you
That's
have
a good
the,
one.
you have Mel Gibson whose wife passes away, and he's like a conflicted pastor and all that. So yeah,
Yeah.
I would say Signs is kind of there with that.
Signs is up there with that.
But again, you're right. It's not common. And when you said that to me in the notes and it said horror drama, I was like, yeah, you're right, because I think that's what separates this from a lot of other movies of this sci-fi horror, because it's also sci-fi. It's an alien invasion.
Yeah, and it's definitely horror. I mean, it's thrilling and scaring. Yeah,
it is. But the drama element really drills down to the characters.
Mm-hmm.
The original one with the family, John Krasinski's family, Emily Blunt, who can forget that scene of her in the bathtub having a baby, keeping the baby safe. And then the second one, they're traveling without their dad. He's gone. Spoilers. Sorry, that movie's like 5 years old at this point. So you have all these like family elements that make it work better, and it works really well in day one. I still have worry, like, do you go forward? Do you mess that up? Yeah. But yeah, I think it's that family and character development that separates these.
Yeah, these are movies that actually hinge on human interaction. And it's so interesting because what does it take away that human interaction is like famous for? Is talking. It takes that part out. And so it has to work in the image. And I'm like, and it's interesting that the names Michael Sarnofsky and Jeff Nichols come up, because I'm like, if any two guys could do that, it's these guys, where it's like, we can do it without words. You and I just watched The Bike Riders. There's plenty of great dialogue in that movie. Don't get me wrong. But the quietest moments, the looks that they give each other, the glances that the characters share, tells way more of the story than any of the dialogue does. These guys, Nichols and Sarnofsky, believe in the idea that what the character says is what they want the world to see. What they do is is who they actually are. So in this instance, in Quiet Place Day One, you only get to see who people are. They don't have the language. They don't have the ability to speak out loud. It's too dangerous. So they have to work through their actions, and the actions show you who they really are. And so what you do is you strip away any sort of facade. This is me on my Art Goon fucking, chaise lounge instead of soapbox. But that's what it is. When you take away the facade of language where I'm trying to present to you who I am, instead I have to just show you who I am. There's no faking the funk. You just can't. And that's what this movie does.
There's a acting exercise that I've seen done, because I've gone to acting classes and watched. I've never tried to be an actor. I don't want to be an actor. I'm a writer.
We'll change that.
But in screenwriting studying, when I've had time to do this, I've actually gone to a couple acting classes and watched. This is years and years ago. And they had one of the exercises I watched them do was a facial expression exercise where they had to express emotion in like a one-on-one scene, a guy and a girl, or a guy and a guy, a girl and a girl. And they had to express emotion without saying a word to each other. It was just through body language and facial expressions. And that's where you see like angry. And basically he had the class guessing like what they were, almost we were making a story to go along with what they were doing. And they made a story of themselves through interaction of just body language and facial expressions, never mouthing anything, just that. It was kind of fascinating because you had to see them act without acting in a lot of ways, because language is a big part of that. We talked about that a little bit. I said there is a little bit of that acting loss, we said last week when we did Exuma, because it's harder to tell inflection of voice when it's a foreign language and you're just reading a translation. I don't know. Are they saying it the right way? Is it being said with the right kind of emotion? And what you said is right. We had to judge by their mannerisms. We had to kind of judge by their physical reactions, because we can't really tell the inflection in their voice because we don't speak the language. Think about that as this, like just eliminate the words and eliminate the language, and you just have to go through the mannerisms. You just have to go through the physical actions. And that's what A Quiet Place Day One requires you to do, or all the Quiet Place movies really require you to do. But in this film in particular, Because even this one's more drilled down, because ultimately you're mostly, I'm not going to say like you're not dealing with more characters, but you really do get drilled down for the biggest part of the movie to two main characters. And that interaction is so impactful and so different than what we saw in A Quiet Place and A Quiet Place Part 2. And in a good way, I mean, like, it's just so different. That's again why I say this movie works. And my biggest fear is like they're just going to say, oh, cash grab, let's go do another one, and let's just throw a fucking alien in Texas, or let's throw an alien in, Colorado, and like, here's your new alien movie. It's in Colorado. Now they're in snow. Like, I don't want that to become what this series is, because this movie told me that, A, you can do it in a big city like New York City where it's noisy as shit. Because remember, the original ones, they're on a farmhouse in the middle of nowhere, basically. And then the second one's an extension of that. This one's in New York City, one of the loudest cities in the world. So right away, you're like, oh, how are they going to do that? And then you drill it down to just a couple of characters. For a massive city of billions, what seems like billions of people, it's millions of people, but millions of people drilled down to two. That's pretty wild when you think about New York City. So, yeah, this movie just hits a lot of different directions. And I think, we got to get into spoilers. Because we're bouncing around a lot of character talk, a lot of story talk, because we just can't get into it without really, because there is no language, you can't really talk a lot about this movie without getting into spoilers. So A Quiet Place Day 1's in theaters right now. If you can't tell already by what we're talking about here, it is definitely worth seeing. If you've seen the first two, I would assume you're probably going to want to go see this one anyways, but if you were on the fence, or, well, this one doesn't have Emily Blunt or any of those, trust me, this is worth your time. And to reiterate what Patrick said a little bit ago, go see this in the theater. This is a theater experience movie. I won't lie to you if it's not. Now, I tell you, I would go see the theater for you. I'd sit in the theater to watch The Bear if they'd let me.
Oh, yes. I'd be there every day.
I can be honest enough to say, like, this isn't like required viewing in the theater. Like, This isn't one, like, you're going to miss everything. But this is a film I would say you need to see in the theater. It is big. It is bold. And the nature of this movie being quiet and then very loud is stunning. So, yeah, that's my recommendation. Patrick, I'll let you say it, and then we'll get into spoilers.
I've said it all, Damon. Go see this in the theater. If you were on the fence, get off the fence already. It's up there. I'll save what I'm going to say about it, but if you loved the other two movies for all the reasons that those movies are good, this movie's as good.
Yeah. So let's get in. Let me lay out the premise for the movie as we get into spoilers, just so we can kind of get into all the different story elements. So when we start the movie, we meet Lupita Nyong'o's character, Samira, and she is living at a hospice that is for cancer patients, which we learn very early on. And that, right out of the gate, I was like, this is something I didn't see coming. And this is... It's like me backhandedly complimenting one thing and then insulting another. All the trailers for this showed Lupita Nyong'o's character out in New York City. She showed the aliens. They showed her running. They showed her covered in dust, and the whole scene with Jaimin Hansu putting his hand over her, telling her, shh. I'm like, okay, we've seen a lot of Lupita Nyong'o. We've seen a lot of New York City. Don't tell me anything else. They didn't. Guess why? Because that right out of the gate of her she's dying. I mean, she's dying. She's in her final stage.
Like stage 4 terminal cancer.
Yeah, and that right out of the gate was like, oh, fuck. This is a gut punch. This is totally different because she's already, like, on her way out, living in a hospice with other people in hospice care. Abigail was where I was going with this.
I knew that's where you were going.
Learn a lesson from A Quiet Place and stop giving so much shit away in your trailer. Because that movie, I'm not saying it would have been perfect, not saying it would have been one of my favorite of the year, but that thing they gave away, not to go back to it, but that thing they gave away ruined it so many ways. This one told us nothing. All we knew is Lupita Nyong'o. We knew there were scenes with Joseph Quinn running. We saw Jaimin Hansu, but they told us nothing. And yes, this is a sequel, so it's already kind of a built-in audience. If you've seen A Quiet Place, you don't have as many questions. But right out of the gate, gut punch. Samira is dying. She's dying. So her and all the hospice members, all the group, they go into the city. They're outside New York City. They go into New York City to see a play, or they go in to see a theater. And her nurse is played by Alex Wolff, who everyone knows from Hereditary and a lot of other
and
things.
Pig, by the way.
And Pig, yeah, absolutely. He's in Pig as well. Yeah, that's true. I forgot about that. He's in Pig. He's the nurse, and he convinces her to come because you can kind of tell she's a bit of a loner. She's in her final days almost.
She's bitter. Everyone else is older, and she's much younger.
Yeah, so it's like she's ready to just cash in the chips and be done at this point. He's kind of trying to draw her back in to be around people, to enjoy life as much as she possibly can. So he takes everyone, they load onto a bus, they go in the city. He promises her they will get pizza. We'll get pizza in the city. You can't get pizza outside the city. If you've ever been to New York City, you know how good the fucking pizza is in New York City. They go in, and as they're in there, she's just not feeling it. It's a marionette show, and she's just not feeling it. So she walks out. She just wants to be in the city because she's from New York City. She lives in Harlem, is where she lived where she lived before this all happened. So she just wants to experience New York City again. So she goes to a bodega. She's just enjoying being in the city. When she gets back to the theater, her nurse is outside on the phone saying, "We got to go. Something's happening in the city. We got to get out of here." And so, of course, seconds later, we see all the bombs falling from the sky, which we actually did see in A Quiet Place Part 2, and then we saw in the trailers for this one, all the aliens landing, and then fucking mayhem breaks out, and all hell breaks loose, and they're running and trying to save themselves. And that is really the premise of the story until Lupita Nyong'o's character eventually runs into a guy named Eric, played by Joseph Quinn, who is in the subway. It flooded. He gets out of the subway in the water, and he ends up meeting up with Lupita Nyong'o's character and more or less follows her like a lost puppy dog because he's British, he's in law school, and he has no idea what he's doing. Like, he doesn't know the city, he's not from here, and she's clearly a native of New York, and so he just like starts following her like a lost puppy dog, and she's literally telling him like, "Shoo, like get the fuck away from me," and he just like quietly just keeps popping around like a little lost puppy dog, and eventually she brings him along with him, and they end up striking this beautiful friendship, taking care of each other all the way till they can get through the movie that he gets her back to her home in Harlem. That's the premise of the movie. And again, just to say it again, Patrick, the gut punch of Samira's character right out of the gate was just something I didn't see coming.
When I learned very quickly in this movie that she was a terminal patient and that she was going to be running the gauntlet of a Quiet Place scenario, I thought, oh, she has nothing to lose. Like, and really, and that's the so interesting thing about this movie. Like, Michael Sarnowski could have easily made like a little movie from Focus Features or from A24 about a guy and a girl at the end of the world, at the apocalypse or something, and she's walking down the street, and he's like, "Hey, where are you going? Like, the world's ending," and she's like, "I'm going to get some pizza because and he's like, "Why?" "Well, I got cancer and I'm going to die. I don't have my medicine. The world's ending. So I'm just going to do what I want to fucking do. All right. Leave me alone." That is what this movie is. But take all the dialogue out and turn like an indie apocalypse movie into a giant movie about huge aliens that are trying to kill you. And I was like, holy shit, Michael Sarnowski must be like, I hit the fucking lotto. I got to make a big budget version of a super small movie. And, sign me up. I watch movies like that all the time. And I'm sure you've probably seen a few of them over the years where it's literally about just two people walking through a dead neighborhood. Like they never explain what's going on or anything like that. In this, what's going on. You have two other movies in a franchise that tell you how dangerous the situation is. So I go, my God, this woman is on borrowed time. And she's making a choice because there's this one pivotal scene where, the chaos has ensued and she's ran. You see a lot of it in the trailer. And then when the dust settles, quote unquote, and that's when she runs into Jaimin Ansu, his character, then they hear the helicopters and they say, everybody head to the harbor, head down to Liberty Island, the Liberty Island docks, and get on boats right there. And you're going to be safe because they can't cross the waters. So the whole city, everybody, and they show it in the trailer, everybody's kind of shuffling their way down south, downtown. She turns and goes the other direction. Why? I don't need saving. I'm dying. I am already dead. I was dead before this happened. So you're seeing somebody say, I'm going to live the last moments of my life on my terms. And I know, I understand the world is collapsing. We're being attacked by giant, scary aliens. Cool. But nothing's going to stop me from having my last moments. I'm not going to cower in fear and run and hide and jump on a harbor boat to do what? To die somewhere else? I want to go see my house again. I want to go see where I spent time with my dad. I want to go have pizza at my favorite pizza shop in the entirety of the city, because I'm dead anyway. I am out of time. It's over. And it's clearly not getting any better. Holy shit, the whole city just got leveled in the matter of like 2 hours. And she goes on her little journey, and she brings this lonely guy with her who kind of won't leave her alone because he's a complete fish out of water. He gets on that boat. He doesn't have anybody to go to on the other side. And he doesn't know what the rest of the world is like. He just knows that this woman is sure of herself. Now, of course, everybody's going to go, all right, Patrick, we get it. You love art, fart movies. Got it. Understood. This whole movie is that movie, that little tiny A24 Focus Features type movie, is laced into a very harrowing chase movie where the whole time that part is happening, that emotional part is happening, they are being chased by monsters who are intent on killing them, and they can't make a sound in that entire time. So all these chase sequences, like this movie is like, it's chapters of crazy ass chases, crazy ass escapes from these terrible, terrible monsters, whatever the hell they are. And just the quiet moments are some of the best little pieces of like what humanity is when it's stripped completely bare, when you've got nothing left, when there is nothing left. So I'm like, you gave me the best of both worlds here. You gave me, on one hand, a huge movie, which, by the way, the scale of this movie feels awesome. It feels gigantic. I don't know how they pulled it off to make this movie feel like they just took New York City and fucking set dressed it to look like the apocalypse, but that's how it feels. And they get into subways, and they go into churches, and they go into buildings, and they go onto rooftops. You know me, Damon, I love a New York movie. I adore New York movies. It feels like they use the whole of New York. So it's a giant, sprawling horror action drama. Holy shit. Sign me up.
So let me go back to two things you said in there about the drama element that I want to mention, because when you meet Samira, you can tell, as you mentioned, there's it's one of the most brilliant scenes in the movie, and this goes credit to both the cinematographer and Michael Sarnowski, the way they shot it. Lupita Nyong'o's character goes outside at one point, and all these people, we're talking hundreds of people, are on the street,
thousands,
heading to the docks, because that's where they've been told they can reach, and if they get there, they'll be safe. There'll be rescue boats to take them away from the city, because they've destroyed all the one thing we didn't mention, they destroyed all the bridges, because they want to try to... Yeah, they want to try to stop the creatures from getting further out, so they destroy the bridges because they can't cross water, and if you've never been to New York, it's a big fucking island, mostly. So they're more or less trapped there unless you can get to these docks where these boats are going to get you out of there. So at one point, as you mentioned, Lupita Nyong'o's character, Samira, is walking through, and everyone's walking one direction. She just goes the other direction. She's like, not only do I not need to go south, I have no reason to be saved because I have nothing to be saved for, because I'm going to die anyways. So I want to go to my neighborhood, my apartment, my pizza, like you said, where I want to see my dad. So that was striking right off the bat. It was just so beautiful, that moment.
Yeah.
But then you get this sick little puppy dog following her everywhere in Joseph Quinn's character, Eric. He's lost. He's far from home. He doesn't really know anyone here. He came here for law school. He mentions his parents are back in Kent, in England. He has no one. And it's almost like she takes pity on him because she realizes how alone he is. And in a way, he's a parallel to her because she's alone. When she's at this hospice, at the very beginning of the movie, she does a poem where she's just like, I hate this place and fuck everybody, is more or less what the poem says. And even she has a really nasty moment with her nurse where her nurse seems to like genuinely care about her. And she's like, you're not my friend. You're just a nurse. And you can see it kind of hurts him because he thought they were friends. She's isolated herself. She's on her way out. She just wants to go on her own terms. And she's like, I don't need, what are we going to do? Form a bond and hang out a year from now? No, I'm going to be dead. So fuck off. So when this little lost puppy dog starts following her, it's like she takes pity on him because in a way it's her parallel. He's alone, has no one, has nowhere to go, has nothing to fight for because no one to fight for. No one's looking for him. So she kind of takes pity on him, and she has a cat through this entire movie. It's almost like he becomes the extension of her cat. She takes him along. But then a funny thing happens. She starts getting sicker. Her pain medication wears off. She says at one point, it feels like my entire body's on fire. And they make it to this church after a very harrowing scene through a subway tunnel where they escape one of these creatures in the water. And they come out on the other side, and it reaches a church where there's a lot of people in there safe and sleeping and, just trying to survive the now apocalypse. And Samira's in a bad way. Like, she's hurting, she's shaking, she's in bad shape, in serious pain. And there's a beautiful moment where Eric shows her a note and says, what meds do you need? And this whole entire time, he's been fucking terrified. Like, he's just been absolutely terrified.
He got panic attacks.
Yeah, he's had panic attacks a couple times at this point. But she saved him, so now he's determined to save her. What meds do you need? So he goes out, finds the med, faces his fears, finds the med, brings him back, and helps her. They eventually make it back to her apartment, and really they're saving each other. So at the end, when Samira she resigned to die early on in this film. All she wanted to do was go home, have some of her favorite pizza, and just wait to die. Like, that's all she was trying to do. And in a weird way, she wanted to go out on her terms because living in that hospice care, she was not going out on her terms. That's why she was so emphatic about going into the city. At least let me get my fucking pizza. At least let me get something of my old life back before I die. And when that didn't happen, she was like severely pissed off. And you understood that because that's all she wants, some semblance of her own life back. And that got taken away from her. So when they go to her apartment and they're hanging out, at this point, she's taking care of Eric, and now Eric is taking care of her. And so at the end of the movie, again, she's been resigned this entire time to just be like, I'm peacing out at some point here. I'm done. But Eric could make it. And so she works ferociously to save him. At the beginning, she couldn't have given two shits about this guy. She's just like, get off my ass. Like, I don't know you. Who are you? Get the fuck away from me. She literally at one point, like, shoos him away. he just follows her like a little puppy dog. But by the end, she saved him and he saved her numerous times in this, one movie, in this hour and a half long movie. He saved her, she saved him. So at the very end, she really saves him. She fights to distract the monsters to allow him to get off the dock and get onto a boat because he can survive, and she knows she's on her way out. It's just a beautiful human story told to primarily these two characters' eyes, where it's one woman who has been isolated, alone, almost self-chosen to be alone. She doesn't want to be around anybody. She just wants some version of her own life as she passes over, into death. And then she meets this guy, and by the end, she wouldn't have made it without him, and he wouldn't have made it without her. They needed each other, and that is really the crux of the story, because by the end, when she really does save him, and she helps him get on this boat to get out of the city, and she goes back in basically saying, all right, I'm ready to go now. That's all she wanted. She got a semblance of her old life back, and she saved him because he saved her. It's a really beautiful story. I know I'm sitting here about to fucking tear up. It's a really beautiful story.
It's super beautiful. It's incredible. First of all, just the perseverance of the human spirit, because they are literally being chased by these horrendous monsters that are fast and ravenous and disgusting and scary as shit, and you can't make a single noise to get away from them. But all that aside, the message of the movie is like, we need each other. We need each other. And remember I said earlier, characters in the movie, when they talk, they're trying to make you believe they're this thing. And that's exactly what Samira was doing in the first 15 minutes of this movie, where she's like, everything is shit, everybody sucks, and I hate you. She doesn't really feel that way about the world. She's a poet. She's actually, that was her profession. She was a poet. She sees the beauty in the world, but this sickness has made her bitter and made her like angry at the world. But the real her, when you stripped away that voice that sort of kept people at arm's length, you saw just how compassionate of a person she was. Then no words needed to be exchanged for her to realize he needs this. He's super scared, way more scared than I am, because I have nothing to be scared of. Even if one of these things kills me, that would suck, but I'm dying anyway. So I have nothing to be scared of. He's terrified and alone. So, but if she used her voice, she might have been to say, like, go away. She could have pushed him away. She couldn't use her voice in those moments. So instead, she showed who she really was, which is a compassionate and good person. And she fought her ass off. That's the thing, going back to the harrowing chase scenes. For someone who is direly ill and her muscles are completely on fire, as she says, she fought these things off with all of her muster, with all of her strength, just the will to survive, just like that natural instinct to survive. And when she was depleted, he returned the favor. And not just returned the favor, but when they finally got to Uptown, and she got her meds, they walk right up to her pizza joint that she wanted to go to. She wanted to go to Patsy's. Patsy's was burned out. It seemed to be all for naught. And there was a little bit of a defeat, a false victory, right? Like she'd got the medicine so she could make her walk to her favorite Uptown pizza joint, and turns out it was burnt out. Shit. So he goes, well, just show me where your dad used to play piano. They go to the little bar. They sit there. They hang out. They start having a couple of drinks, because why the fuck not? And he goes, I'll be right back. He goes and finds another pizza shop, writes Patsy's on the box, and gives it to her. And she takes a bite. She goes, yeah, this ain't Patsy's, but I appreciate the sentiment. Like, you did something nice for me when you didn't have to. Beautiful stuff. Really just beautiful storytelling. And then, of course, she does the sacrifice, which is kind of like almost a mirror of what Krasinski does for his kids. It's like, I'll distract them so you can escape. It was that kind of thing. It was beautiful. Absolutely.
It great. Was, as we're talking here, people listening are probably thinking, where the fuck are the aliens in all this? Where's the
They're all over this movie.
They're all over this movie. It doesn't go away. But the story is so impactful and beautiful. There's a moment, I'm talking about like tearing up. There's a moment when they're in the bar where her dad used to perform, where he knows she's in a bad way. Like, she's still hurting. He knows. Like, he knows. And she's also kind of down. She didn't get her pizza. Now she's just drinking. Like, she's just like, he knows she's resigned to die. And so he goes and gets her that pizza, and there's a smile. He writes Patsy's on the box. It's so sweet, and they enjoy a piece of pizza together. And I don't care if it's not good pizza or not. She's just loving it. Like, he did that for her, and she appreciates it. And then he does this little card trick for her. And he finds a pack of cards, and he knows a card trick, and he shows her a card trick. The most simple thing, and it's like a little stage show. And he does it, and she smiles, and she laughs, and it's just the sweetest. He's trying to give her a moment or two of joy and levity in this hellhole that they're now living in, and knowing that she's already living in her own personal hellhole on her way out, dying from cancer. That scene was so beautiful and so sweet. And at that point, when you watch, and I know this sounds terrible to say, when you watch A Quiet Place, when the little boy gets snatched off the bridge at the beginning, when the toy goes off and the fucking thing comes and grabs, you don't see what grabs him, you just see him fucking go. It's like, oh shit, like what happened? Like, oh my God. And then you see when you pick up, whatever time it is later, the family, the daughter still feels regret for basically telling her little brother, like, take the toy, it's okay. And then it gets him killed. Everything's harrowing. I think the closest thing was when Emily Blunt's in the bathtub, about to give birth, and she's like holding her mouth because she wants to scream out in bloody murder, and she can't. That's pretty harrowing. But there was just something so sweet and beautiful about that scene towards the end in that bar when he does that card trick for her, where I'm just like, you can't kill these fucking characters. These are like the best characters I've ever seen. I do not want them to die, even though I've known since the first 3 minutes of the movie that one of them is dying. But I was just, this is beautiful. They can put these kids together. But the ending is so poetic, fitting because she's a poet, that she, again, as you said, she's mostly gone through this entire film. She definitely shows fear at times, like when she's being chased and she's hiding under fucking cars, like she's running for her life. She's not just standing out in the middle of the road saying, "Come get me," because I have nothing to live for. She's fighting to save her life. So she's definitely scared, but she's also the mindset that I know I'm on my way out. All she's really living for in this movie at the beginning anyways, is to get home and get her pizza and just be at home and have that some semblance of her own life back before she dies. So that's what she's fighting for, really. Like, she's fighting so when she's saving herself, crawling under cars and all the other stuff she does, that is to get to her end goal, her end game, so to speak. But then he becomes her other end game because he saves her as much. It's just, it's fucking poetic, man, and it's really beautiful storytelling. And to relate it back to Michael Sarnowski's other movie, Pig, that we talked about, that is a very dialogue empty movie. There's very little dialogue. I think Nicolas Cage talks at the beginning. He says a few words in the middle, and then I don't think he talks much till the very end again. Like, it's a very quiet movie for what is a really impactful story. It works out perfectly that Michael Sarnowski's the one telling this story because they don't say much of anything, but boy, do they get the story across.
You know what this is like we talked about, like, where could you go in a movie, like in a franchise like The Quiet Place? There's only so many places you can go with this thing. Michael Sarnowski pitched it something like this. Of the thousands, millions of stories of people we could tell in A Quiet Place universe, what if we told the story of two good people who run into each other? What if we just did that? Just two good people, two good strangers who were good to each other in the last moments. Because, you know, I doubt wherever he ended up going, which he probably went to wherever Jaimin Hansu went, because Jaimin Hansu was on that boat that he ended up getting on. They probably went to that little settlement, and guess what? Things didn't go well about 460 some days later. Didn't go well for them. But they had one good last moment together. They like, and there was this great shot. It was kind of near the end of the movie where it was just images, a lot like the bear, coming back to the bear, just images of New York City kind of torn up. Nothing happening. Life had just collapsed. And you go, that's it. Humanity's done. Humanity as we know it is done.
Yeah.
So why not have this last good moment? And that's what I love that pitch. There is something so very optimistic about that, because you and I, of course, we love horror. Everybody assumes that horror people are like, you know, Satanist crazy people, which, by the way, never mind what's on my hat. I think any good cynic, which I think you and I have probably been accused of being cynical, was born an optimist. And Sarnowski has a mind for that. He goes, yeah, like, the world is really cynical, but deep down it's because we wanted to believe that we are better than what's going on all around us. And so why not just give me a moment to tell a story about two great people? And that's what they do.
And to be clear, for all the artsy fartsy stuff that we're talking about here, which, you know, this is normally Patrick's department, I'm jumping right on board for this movie.
Oh, you're in my department now, pal.
There is more than enough horror in this movie. There are more than enough chase scenes and harrowing encounters with these aliens. The problem is when you're doing a review like this, I mean, it's chase scenes. It's you know, making a small sound and these fucking things come crawling out. You know that part of the premise. So it's harder to really describe that. And, you know, we're going to talk about, when we get into categories here in a second, we're going to talk about some of our favorite moments and we'll include that. But I want to be clear. We're talking about this beautiful story. It's because of what's going on around them, the mayhem that's going on around them, that really increases and really almost like adrenalizes the care that you have for these two characters. As I said, when he's doing that card trick for her, in my back of my head, I'm like, you better not fucking kill these characters, because oh my God, I've fallen in love with both of them. But that's the whole point of what I'm getting at, is because, you know, kind of the same thing a little bit with, you know, even what I said, I didn't even have that same emotion for the A Quiet Place characters, but I know a lot of people did, in that moment, I know everyone was rooting for the daughter to survive, and everyone had their heart broken when John Krasinski's character didn't survive. So in this movie, it's very much similar feelings, and I would say amplified because you drill it down to really two characters for the most part, and one character you've known since the beginning is going to die. They've laid that out to you 3 minutes into the movie. She's got cancer. She's not going to make it, no matter what happens with the aliens.
Right.
So to be clear, there's a lot of horror in this movie. There's a lot of aliens, and holy shit, are there some harrowing scenes. The A Quiet Place Part 1, what was so well done about that and why it worked really well in that kind of a movie is you didn't see the aliens for the longest time.
Yeah.
You didn't really see the aliens almost basically the end of the movie for the first time when you really saw the alien. Everything else was sounds and movements and description of don't make it sound, all that kind of stuff. Part 2, you see it a lot more, of course. But in this one, it's all over the place. I mean, it's fucking Alien City. There's aliens in every 5 seconds of this movie. There's aliens everywhere. But that's also the scary part of this movie is that around any corner, you're in New York City. Where do you think these aliens are going to? They're sound-seeking aliens. Where's one of the first places they're going to land? The noisiest place on Earth. So there's a million of these fucking things rolling around. So, you walk outside, you step on a piece of glass, one of them's coming out of a window to fucking chomp on you. So, again, to be clear, while there is a lot of drama and we're talking about the emotion, the character development, these two great characters we built together, you said a story about two good people in the apocalypse, that's all absolutely true. But for the horror fans out there saying, well, where's the horror? I promise you, there's plenty of horror. There's plenty of harrowing encounters. There's plenty of pulse pumping, grip the edge of your seat moments in this movie. It's just wrapped around a really beautiful story.
Yeah, the Quiet Place template is 100% in place. That's that crazy thing about it. This franchise actually does a great job at keeping its template there. Like it is, you are every single time going to be worried about being viciously destroyed by these aliens. That does not change in this movie. They just managed to make the anchor of the movie something very different and something very beautiful. I think it's the most beautiful of the three movies, to be honest with you. As much as I love the original for what it was, this movie is way more about the beauty of the human spirit, whereas that movie was sort of more about like family, you know what I mean? Like, and there's family tragedy in it. Like it's a very family oriented movie. These are two strangers. And it's like in the darkest moments, can we be good to each other? And Michael Sarnowski said, yes, we must.
You said family. I thought you were going to start quoting Fast and the Furious for a second.
Hey, bro, I live my life a quarter mile at a time, all right?
Yeah. Don't make me leave tread mark on your face.
I'm in your face.
Yeah.
Now we're just going to do Fast and the Furious quotes.
Yeah, it's going to do Fast and Furious. I always joke. I told my friends, I have friends I work with who are like, they love that series, but not like, they do, but not seriously. Like they know it's goofy and stupid and fun. But I said we should have a drinking game sometime where we watch a Fast and Furious movie and we see how many dumb car references they stuff in there. Like that, like the famous, like I live my life a quarter mile at a time. And where she says, I'll leave tread marks on your face and, smell my exhaust. I think just so many cheesy car lines in there. It's just
suck
hilarious.
My tailpipe.
Yeah, whatever it is. Like all those lines in that movie. And I'm just like, have a drinking game. You'll be trashed like halfway through the movie. But real quick, I want to throw this question out there. This has nothing really to do about this movie in particular, but also it does. So I talked about earlier when I said alien invasion movies typically end one of two ways. Either the aliens win or we win. That's kind of how alien stories go, right? Like alien invasion stories. Let me be clear. Not necessarily alien, but alien invasion stories. And sometimes it sets up a trilogy or whatever, but ultimately it's that. Aliens come, we have to fight back. That's the story. And I get it. I mean, that's not hard to tell. Is it kind of wild to you? And this is what scares me about future movies, because this is where I'm talking about, like, someone's going to do this now that I say it. I know I'm jinxing it. We've yet to have any reason why these aliens landed, where they came from, what they're really doing here. I mean, they're just laying waste to us. Why? Like, what happened? None of those questions have been asked, nor answered, nor does it matter. And I'm curious, has there ever been a film like this where we're 3 films in. We all know the premise. We all know the biology behind the aliens. They're these sound-seeking aliens. They don't have eyes. They just listen, and they fucking kill you if you make a sound. This movie actually shows them eating for the first time, which was kind of weird. I never don't remember.
And disgusting.
Yeah, very disgusting too. But we don't know why they're here. We don't know how they got here, and no one has tried to tell us that. No one has said, no army person has showed up and said, we discovered they were coming from planet Zarnak, or none of that shit. Is it kind of wild, and is there ever another example of that where we're 3 films in, and again, to be fair, 3 pretty good movies. I would say part 1 and this one are really good movies. Part 2 is good, but I wouldn't say it's like outstanding. So 3 solid movies, all on the same premise, yet we know nothing. And that is a weird thing, because you got to imagine somewhere someone has said to John Krasinski, who is the architect of this whole thing, who also worked, I want to give credit where credit's due, he did work on the story with Michael Sarnowski. Sarnowski wrote the script, but the story was created by him and John Krasinski. He's had a hand in all this. It's his story. He wrote it.
Yeah.
That no one along the way is like, so where's the scientist that's going to explain all this? Where's the army guy that's going to say, we got to fight back? Where's the nuclear weapon? Or what? Nothing like that's how I'm like, this is shocking to me, because that's every alien invasion movie.
All you have to do, because some studio head said that. I guarantee it. Somebody at one of the studios financing this thing says, well, at some point we have to explain this to people, right? We have to explain why it's going on. I would just march that guy into a small room with a VCR and put in Texas Chainsaw: The New Generation, where that guy comes up and explains why the Sawyer family exists. First of all, the movie's terrible anyway. I'd be like, you see how bad that movie is? But the worst part of that movie is the part where he explains why the Sawyers exist, which completely destroys everything that came before that. It makes everything before that terrible if that's how it wants to land. So I'm sure that Krasinski seems like a pretty smart storyteller, and clearly so is Sarnowski. They had to just be like, yeah, that would make this movie totally suck. Like there's no point. Like, and there would never be that situation in real life anyway. If this premise happened where these aliens rain down on us just like comets and just ravage the earth, they're just giant insects. They don't speak, they scream, and they eat meat, and that's all they do. There would be no one figuring out why they're here. Nothing about that matches the tone or the idea that this movie presents. It will always be an act of random violence. It will be a very unfortunate end to humanity, which there's countless ways humanity can end. One of them is just something from space comes and completely fucks us up, which is this premise. Don't bother trying to explain it. That's not what these movies do. That's not the point of these movies.
I'll give you an example. I'm going to compare this to another movie, and your hair's going to go back, because you know how much I love this movie. But this is my best comparison I can tell, and why somehow Quiet Places continued to pull it off and this series did not. One of the greatest films ever made is the 1970s classic by Steven Spielberg called Jaws.
Yep.
In Jaws, we are in a little town called Amity in New England. It's a little island, and it's a summer town that counts on summer dollars, as the mayor famously says. The beaches, the summertime, that's when they make their money. That's when they are there. And a shark attack changes everything. Why did the shark come into town? We don't know. The shark just happened to swim into these waters for whatever reason from deep in the ocean, and it found food. And because you keep sending fucking people into the ocean, it continues to find food. And so, as Hooper famously says, unless you kill this shark or cut off its food supply, it's just going to hang around and keep fucking eating people. Because that's what sharks do. It's a miracle of evolution. All this shark does is swim, eat, and make little sharks. And that's it. There's no science to it. There's no reason for it. It's just a shark, and they got to deal with this problem because it's shown up on their island. Where Jaws goes way off is later in the other movies where they literally turn it into like a family vendetta. The shark holds a grudge against the Brody family, which is fucking bonkers when you think about it now. But that's where they went with it.
Movie. Jaws the Revenge. I love Jaws Revenge for how absolutely stupid it is.
It is so unbelievably stupid because they make it that these sharks have a vendetta against the Brody family. If you've not seen the other Jaws movies and you're listening to me saying, Damon, come on now, it can't be that. It's fucking that.
It's incredibly bad. I believe at one point the shark roars.
Yeah.
Which, sharks don't roar. That's not a thing.
Yeah, they don't roar. That's what, like I said, just trust me. So that's where you take a concept similar to Quiet Place, where it's just aliens are there. We don't know why they're there. We don't know what they're, but we know what they're about. And we know what they're after in terms of like they're just sound-seeking aliens. So you make a noise, you're fucked. That's it. And they keep the story pretty small. It's a family, and now it's basically two people. Don't fuck with it, is what I'm saying. Don't fuck with that formula. Don't make some vengeful alien come after Joseph Quinn in the fourth movie because no aliens die in this movie. Really, one alien dies and drowns. The rest of the aliens are perfectly fine. No aliens actually die that we see on screen. Do they die? So, like, don't make it to where the aliens are trying to find Joseph Quinn or some shit. Just leave. If you're going to continue to do these, and you and I both know they will, try your best to keep it small, but make it big. Meaning, the aliens can be big, they can be ferocious, they can be evil, they can be vengeful, they can be, or not vengeful, they can be nasty, they can be just killing machines. They can be the fucking shark. Just find a good reason to keep putting people in the water.
Yeah.
And that's what A Quiet Place Day One does. Whereas Jaws is like, hold on now, what if we actually have the shark have a vendetta against this one family? Don't do that. That's all I'm saying. Don't do that.
Yeah, please stay away from that. This formula is working. Keep at it.
Did I make a good analogy there?
Oh God. It's always good when you bring up Jaws of Revenge. That movie's insane.
But tell me that's not right. Like, the first one didn't have rhyme or reason why it was happening. It just happened. And then they're like, we got to figure out why these sharks keep coming back. Oh, yeah, they're going after the Brody family. What? Yeah.
No, don't do that. Don't do anything like that. That will really ruin this.
Yeah, stop doing that. Do you remember that Dennis Quaid was in one of those movies? And so was Michael Caine.
Michael Caine was in Jaws the Revenge. Dennis Quaid. That's easily my number one Jaws movie. Is Jaws the Revenge?
Yeah, so Jaws 3D has him, has Dennis Quaid. It has Mario Van Peebles. I think is that
Mario Van Peebles is in Revenge as well.
Okay, yeah.
Opposite Michael Caine.
Yeah, it's Dennis Quaid, and there's somebody else famous in the third one too that. Much like Matthew McConaughey disavows being in Texas Chainsaw The Next Generation, I think Dennis Quaid has wiped that one from his IMDb page, but he is in that movie. So, anyways, sorry, just had to throw that out there. Patrick, what do you say? Let's get into some categories. We got lots to talk about with A Quiet Place Day One. Let's kick things off as we do each and every week here on the show with our best performance. Patrick, I have a feeling I know where you're going with this one. Who is your best performance in A Quiet Place Day One?
I want to be clear. I think all the performances in this movie are great. I mean, really good. Like every performance is touching and real and deep. And I loved them all. And everybody got a great scene. Everybody got one really good scene in this movie. But let's be real. It's Lupita Nyong'o's movie. And she carries it. She carries it on her shoulders the entire time. And she does it her way. She doesn't have to be over the top, bravado, badass, nothing like that. She's single-minded and she's complex, like all at once. It's really weird. She has one singular goal. She's going to make that goal happen, however she is. But you see all the beautiful little nuances that make up that character, that make her up. And it takes a top flight actor. And of course, it was a coup to get her. They were like, shit, we just got an Oscar winner. Proof's in the pudding. Okay, when you win that award, it's because you've done something special. And she did. I've 12 Years a Slave is an incredible film, and she absolutely knocked me on my ass in that movie. She knocks me on my ass in this movie too, because she's got those kind of chops. And she does it with very little dialogue, with almost no dialogue. She gets 15 minutes at the top, a little bit at the end, in the middle. She is just playing to raw emotion. She's emoting, her eyes, her body language, everything about it. It's a masterclass. Will she get nominated this year? Probably not. Horror movies tend to not get nominated, but she's damn good at her job. It was a no-brainer. I had to go with her.
You just stole what I was going to say, but you're absolutely right. You know, sadly, we kind of already know she's not, because if she was going to get nominated for a horror film, she probably should have got nominated for Us, which wasn't my favorite movie. But her
honestly, I think she's better in this.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, she was great in that, and she didn't get nominated for that either. And that was actually with, like, a more, like, traditional Oscar role.
Pretty talky.
Yeah. And, like, performance-driven also in that movie. Which, again, I like it, didn't love it, but I liked it, and she was incredible in that movie. There's a few actors, Patrick, working in Hollywood today that when they're in something, I just, A, go see it, and B, assume they're going to be fucking awesome. Mahershala Ali is one of my current favorite actors. Leonardo DiCaprio is my all-time favorite actor. Lupita Nyong'o is on that list. If she's in something, I want to see it, and I know she's going to be fucking awesome. What did she do in this movie? Guess what, Patrick? She was fucking awesome. Incredible. Give her awards, give her anything she wants. If she's got an idea in her head of like what she wants to do next, and you know, she was great in Black Panther. I mean, everything she's done, she's been incredible in. Whatever she wants to do, just give it to her. Like, she wants to play Superman. Let her play fucking Superman. I don't care. Let
Your
her do
movie is better if she's in it. That's it.
Yeah. She's incredible. One of my favorite actors working in Hollywood today. Like I said, I think it's like I have like a 4 or 5 actors, as I said, that's just like, you know, if they're in it, I know it's going to be fucking awesome. I think Margot Robbie's probably in that category too. She's pretty fucking incredible.
She's great.
I can't really think of anything bad she's done. So it's just, you know, you put Leo, you put Margot Robbie, you put Mahershala Ali, you put Lupita Nyong'o, you're probably going to have a good movie. So she is the answer, to be fair. But I also, because, again, I don't want to just sit here and only talk about one best performance because everyone's good in this movie. But I was really blown away by Joseph Quinn in this movie because, like you, like most people, I had only ever seen Joseph Quinn in Stranger Things. Now, did I love him in Stranger Things? Like every other person on fucking earth that watched Stranger Things, yes, I loved Eddie Munson. You were a Hesher, I was a metalhead. That character spoke to us on a deep philosophical level. Did that character speak to us in that show? We all loved him in that show. He was the character of that season of Stranger Things. I have a fucking mini guitar of Eddie Munson hanging out in my back shelf back there. I love that character. But that's all I'd ever seen him in. Now we know he's going to be in Fantastic Four. He's become a much bigger deal since then. This is really only the second thing I've really seen him in. And I was stunned at how good he is. Like, he's one of those actors that didn't really take off until he got that breakout role. Like, he wasn't a young guy. You know, he wasn't Leo, who was acting when he was 12 and continued to act until he's, you know, now Leonardo fucking DiCaprio. But you're watching this and you're just like, what did casting directors not see in this guy? Like, who saw this guy audition for something and said, "No, we'll pass"? Because I'm watching this guy and I'm just like, who didn't want to cast this guy and everything? He is really good in this movie. He acts at the same level as Lupita Nyong'o.
Yeah.
And just heard us praise her up left, right, and center. He's her equal in this movie. It's pretty incredible, like how good he is in this movie. He plays timid and scared early. He plays what's the phrase they use in Full Metal Jacket? The crazy tough and or is it the phony tough and the crazy brave or the phony crazy?
Something like that. Yeah.
He's the phony brave in this movie. He's never really brave in this movie, but he makes himself be brave in this movie. He does it to help her because she helped him. When he goes out to get her medicine, he wants no part of this. He doesn't want to go get her fucking medicine, but he does it because she needs it. And so he's like, I'm going to force myself to go out to this urban apocalypse and get the medicine she needs. Her cat runs up a beam with an alien like 3 feet away, and he crawls up this beam to rescue the cat. Why? Because she loved the cat. That was her only other thing in this world. That was she lost her dad. She was losing her life. She loved her cat. He's phony brave. He wants no part in any of this, but he does it over and over and over again because he wants to save her. I was stunned by his performance. Again, to be clear, Lupita Nyong'o, this is her movie. But if you're doing Oscars, she's leading. He's a great supporting.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a challenge when you have to work opposite an Oscar winner who's very, very deserving of the category. And he rose to the challenge. I mean, I think that's ultimately what I got to say about him is like he had to get on her level or it was going to fall completely apart. I don't want to pick on I think his name is Simon Rex, right? The guy who was in Red Rocket.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not picking on him because I actually liked Red Rocket. That's like probably, it's a really good movie. But he was sitting at the Actors Roundtable that year talking with like Nicolas Cage and this one and that one. I mean, he was talking with heavyweights and you could see him and I'm sure he would admit this too. He was completely out of his depth because those people are like dyed in the wool thespians and he just happened to stumble upon a role he was damn good at. And he doesn't use acting the way they use acting in their brains, and it showed at the table. He clearly didn't know how. He didn't even know how to talk to these guys because they speak a different language than him. And so it's a weird comparison to say, but like that could have happened here, and it didn't. Joseph Quinn has one other role that is nothing like this. That is in a show that I don't consider a show that shows off great acting. It's an entertaining show, and I like Stranger Things, but it's not like an acting piece. It's not a place you go to really.
It's not The Bear or Succession.
It's not The Bear or Succession. It's just fun, and that's fine. There's room for all this stuff, but for him to go from that, which is this heightened kind of goofy, kind of fun, weird genre movie, to like going right in there with one of the best actors working today and showing up, you got to give it to him. I mean, you really do. Like, I said it before, everybody, Alex Wolff's got a great little part in this movie. Jaimin Ansu's got a couple of really touching moments in this movie. Like everybody gets good stuff, but Joseph Quinn had some serious challenges and he met them.
And Jaimin Hansu is another one. I just want to throw a shout out there because I don't want to sit here and name every single person in this movie because they're all good, even though it's actually kind of a small cast. But Jaimin Hansu is one of those character actors who doesn't do a lot of leading roles, but he does like a lot of supporting roles, and he's always very good. He's the only redeemable quality in those god-awful Shazam movies. But he's good in everything he does, and I want to shout him out as well, because I really like Jaimin Hansu. He doesn't have a ton of leading roles. I think he had that one leading role. He was one of the lead actors in Never Back Down, the MMA movie, which I was like, good God. But he doesn't get a lot of leading roles, but he's great in supporting roles, and everything he's in, he's really good. And he's in this movie for, 10 minutes maybe total, not much. And he's really good in it. So I just want to shout him out because he doesn't typically have like the leading role, which, again, he's not Joseph Quinn, he's not Lupita Nyong'o in this movie, but he's really good in everything he does.
And he breaks your fucking heart in those fucking 10 minutes. In those 10 minutes, he gives you everything. It's like they showed up for that script and for Sarnowski and just went like, we'll give you our absolute best. Because the moment that he has in the movie, I don't need to spoil the entire movie, but there was just a moment early on when the attack was happening and someone panicked and he had to do something to keep everyone, including his son, safe. Super touching moment. And it's just, the cast can't lose in this movie. Like they were expertly directed because they are expert actors. It all worked out very well.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to MVP. This is our Ken Foray Banana Hammock MVP award, named after great character actor Ken Foray from the movie From Beyond, when he jumped down a flight of stairs and into a basement to stop and kill a creature wearing nothing more than a thong bikini. If that's not an MVP performance, I don't know what is. So, Patrick, for A Quiet Place Day 1, who gets your MVP award?
It makes me think that we need Ken Foray in the next Quiet Place. Like, he's just that kind of guy. My MVP goes to Michael Sarnowski, the incredible director who has now knocked it out of the park 2 movies in a row. This movie was all about thematic vision, and he executed it. And he executed it in existing work. People try this all the time. They try it in Marvel, they try it in Star Wars, they try it in DC, where they go, I'm going to bring a little bit of what I am to the thing that everybody already knows. And sometimes it works, sometimes it definitely doesn't work. This time I was like, wow, he made a movie that completely stands on its own, that does not need anything else, that does not need anything else. It speaks for itself, and it has a message that is very much its own message. And to do that on this grand scale, I wish I had the budget in front of me. I don't, but I'm guessing it was not cheap. I'm guessing it was at least eclipsing $100 million, if not over. And it looked fantastic. The fit and finish of the movie's great. But more importantly than that, the story was perfect. I'm not kidding. The story was great. It was very good. The performances were good. He brought the best out of the actors with the great story that he worked on, and he executed his vision to perfection.
A lot of times when you come out of the gate with a great first movie and then suddenly everyone wants to work with you, you have almost in a weird way a do or die moment in your very next film, which is totally not fair, by the way. But a lot of great directors get a second movie and it's a big budget for way different from what they had in their first movie. Now, occasionally you'll have a Quentin Tarantino who hits it out of the park with Reservoir Dogs, and that leads to him doing his own movie in Pulp Fiction, and it's also great, ends up becoming a Cannes winner and all these other things. But a lot of times it's Chloe Zhao who won an Oscar, and then she gets The Eternals, and no one liked it. No one liked that movie. I didn't mind it, but no one liked The Eternals. No one talks about The Eternals. No one even thinks about those characters coming back because no one liked that movie. And I feel bad because her last movie was her Oscar-winning movie and she did really well, but Chloe Zhao got raked over the coals for The Eternals. Was it all her fault? No, but that's how the movie business goes. You and I both know this.
Mm-hmm.
So for Michael Sarnowski to do Pig, which is ultimately a really small movie, to then step into an existing world and do a third film, not even a sequel, a third film, and a spinoff, so he doesn't even get Emily Blunt to lean on to say, hey, Emily Blunt, you're fucking phenomenal. Let me lean on you to ease me into this world. No, you get none of that. For him to pull off what he did here was almost like that card trick in the third act of this movie. It was a fucking magic trick. Because it's hard, man. It is really hard to step into a world like this and find success. And boy, did he knock it out of the park.
Can you believe Pig never got any fucking nominations? It's a total digression, but it's just the fact that Nicolas Cage was not nominated for that performance. I'm not underselling Pig. For a lot of you listening out there watch other movies besides horror, and you're like, is it really that good? Nobody even talked about it. It's amazing. And the fact that this guy can do this now on a whole different scale, with a whole different thing, like inside IP, it's insane that this guy is that good of a storyteller. And he now enters the very hallowed halls of he's got my money.
Yeah.
You know, Rose Glass, we talk about, she's got our money every time out. Sarnowski's got my money every time out. He cannot lose. He makes Robert Eggers has got Nosferatu. That trailer just dropped. Guess what? He gets my money every time. Michael Sarnowski is going to get my money every time because he can execute his vision. And what I love about his vision so far in these first two movies is that he tells you a quiet little story. No pun intended. He tells you a quiet little story in the midst of great big worlds, because Pig's like that too. He's telling you a tiny little story that exists. There's a much bigger world right behind it. And he's just telling you the quiet little moments of that particular story. And he can do it real good.
And I would say, I think you'll agree with me when I say this, because you know me, I'm a massive Robert Eggers fan too. Nosferatu, I cannot fucking wait. But I would argue, and you know my Tarantino opinion. You don't share it, but you know my Tarantino opinion.
I know it.
I think the guy walks on water. I think it's harder. People are going to be like, what the fuck? I think it's harder to do what Michael Sarnowski is doing right now than to do what Robert Eggers and Quentin Tarantino did, because ultimately Quentin Tarantino and Robert Eggers are still doing their own thing. They didn't go off. Tarantino didn't become Marvel's Tarantino, and Robert Eggers didn't become, DC's Robert Eggers, or fucking Jurassic Park 4, directed by Robert Eggers.
Right.
He's doing his Robert Eggers movies, The Witch, The Lighthouse, The Northman, Nosferatu. These are all his projects. Tarantino, Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction. These are they're doing their movies. No one goes to Tarantino and says, "Hey, Quentin, would you like to direct fucking the next Jurassic Park?" He said he wanted to do a Star Trek movie because he loved Star Trek, and everyone lost their fucking minds because they're like, Tarantino, he did end up not doing it, but like everyone's like, oh my God, Tarantino wants to do something that's not his. Eggers is the same way. Eggers is doing what he wants. For Sarnowski to step into a franchise and do this is really impressive. So I'm just saying, I think you'd agree, like, it's harder to do what Sarnowski's doing and actually do it well, because ultimately Eggers and Tarantino are just doing their own things, and they're doing it they're doing it amazing.
Yeah, they're doing it really well. Guys. Yeah.
But they're doing Tarantino films. They're doing Robert Eggers films. They're not doing John Krasinski's story the third time around in a big $100 million fucking sci-fi horror drama epic.
I was talking with my director buddy just before the show tonight, and he was asking me about Quiet Place. We talk movies constantly. We see movies constantly together. And he goes, would you say it's, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit. He goes, would you say it's on par? He's like, have we ever said a third movie is good? This third movie is great. It's not good. It's great. That's the thing. I just thought of one other one, by the way. I know on your end, you know how I feel about Dream Warriors, but I know Dream Warriors is undeniably better than Part 2. I think, and I actually agree with that, even though like there's parts of Part 2 that I like. But another one I can think of that Part 3 is superior to Part 2 is Guardians of the Galaxy. I think it's far superior. And I've grown to like Volume 2 a little bit more than I used to. I like the story. The story's still really strong about it. It's just not the most engaging movie, but it's a strong story. That's another Part 3 that's great. But this, talk about, I mean, like, but that was still kind of like James Gunn almost got like free reign over Guardians of the Galaxy. It really was James Gunn's world that just happened to be Marvel. But he basically plucked Guardians of the Galaxy out of obscurity anyway. It's not like it wasn't Iron Man. It wasn't the any of the big names. It was basically no names, and he could play in that world however he wanted. Just like you're saying though, with Sarnowski, he had a well-established thing that is undoubtedly his thing. Like, he brought his own thing. Like, now I'm like, well, let's play this trick with it. Let's give Sarnowski a Star Wars movie. Like, let's give Sarnowski the Superman sequel after James Gunn is done with it. Let's see, what does he do with that? Like, I want to see him try everything, because it's like, that's kind of what franchises are in desperate need of, is like a singular voice that can speak the language of the franchise, but be something special in all its own. Because I feel like I could just show people this movie. I don't need to explain to them, no, it's part of like this Quiet Place world, and these people that happen on a farm in upstate New York or something. They don't need to know anything about that. I can hand them Part 3, and it speaks all on its own.
Yeah, I would give you two more superhero examples. I think you'd agree with Avengers: Infinity War is far superior to Age of Ultron, and
far superior. I would argue. Yes,
and I would also argue, and they're newer, but I would also argue Spider-Man: No Way Home is better than Far From Home. I like Far From Home a lot. Don't get me wrong, Far From Home is great, but I still prefer No Way Home. So there's a couple superheroes.
Yeah, I guess they're out there now that I'm thinking about it.
But the thing is with superheroes, though, you're dealing with embedded stories, though, that's been around for hundreds of years, or so it's a lot different than a self-created universe. Even in Nightmare on Elm Street, where you're dealing with totally different directors, writers, like all this different stuff, and even like you said with Quiet Place, like yes, it's John Krasinski's story, but we're dealing with a different director, different actors. So yeah, it's harder to do. It's a magic trick unto itself. So for me, for my MVP, and this segues perfectly into my MVP goes to John Krasinski, because he created this whole thing. And for us to be on the third film in a spinoff, to be fair, this is not a continuing story. This is not the third film in the Quiet Place universe. This is a little, side project, side piece. For this film to be as good as it was, for the story to come from John Krasinski and Michael Sarnowski. And we're in part 3 where we're just talking about like all we can come up with are superhero movies, more or less. They're like the third parts are good. Yeah, like, and also, and here's where I want to give credit where credit's due. And again, I don't know how much interference Paramount Pictures has played because they are a corporation, they are a studio, and boy, do they need money right now.
Boy, do they.
But this is something different in the horror industry. And you know this, Patrick, very well. And maybe I'm wrong. I'm just throwing this out there as an idea. You work in film more than I do. Maybe you can correct me. When Wes Craven made Nightmare on Elm Street in 1984, he wrote the story, he wrote the script, he directed the movie. It ended up being a smash hit. But ultimately, he just sold the project to Warner Brothers New Line Cinema. When they did the sequel, he didn't come back. Now, did he eventually come back to the franchise? He tried to make part 3, didn't work out. He left. He eventually came back for New Nightmare and made another great, incredible movie. But he gave that away. Like, it was, he wrote it, they took it, and they fucking ran with it, whether he liked it or not. You've seen personally the battle that's gone for years with Friday the 13th with like the director and the writer. They fucking battle for years over these characters because they sold it and then they went and made 19 sequels, some to degrees of success. Maybe I'm wrong here, but even though A Quiet Place, when it came out, was not, no one expected it to do what it did necessarily.
Total surprise hit.
But John Krasinski was an established actor. I mean, even if he was just on The Office, he was still an established star. Everyone knew who he was. Actually, what A Quiet Place did was say he could be dramatic, because at that point, everyone thought he was a funny character from The Office. And Emily Blunt was already an established actor as well. His wife, of course, but like she'd been around. But because he was such a star and a well-known established star, I think he was able to maintain more control over his universe versus, and we see this in horror all the time, first-time director, first-time writer, they sell the project, it's no longer theirs, and the studio just takes it over. And we've seen interviews with guys and women, people say, I had nothing to do with that. They just did what they wanted. It's not my character anymore. I sold it. Like, you know, I created it, but hey, they own it now. They can do whatever the fuck they want. I feel like because John Krasinski was more established, he's had more control. Did he sell something to Paramount? I'm sure he did.
Oh, yeah.
But he's so embedded in this universe that they're like, yeah, we can't do this without you. This is your baby. And so I feel like that influence has at least played some part in why we got A Quiet Place Part 2 and why we're getting A Quiet Place Day 1 the way we're getting it and not getting the, let's bring in the army. Let's bring in the scientists to tell us where these monsters came from. Let's have a negotiating table where the monsters sit down with us and we talk and we try to hash things out. John Krasinski's like, get the fuck out of here. All right, this is my story. So he gets my MVP award. And again, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like because he's a more established name, he has more carte blanche than the average unknown horror writer would have.
I do think it helps that he was the established name who fostered it. Now, I do want to give some credit to Brian Woods and Scott Beck, who wrote the original script. Then John Krasinski acquired it and then rewrote it. But what made that script so special was the stuff that they did. They did some very unorthodox stuff in the script that had never been done before. And he just he finessed the story a little bit more, made it more about a family. He brought a lot of important things to it. But I also want to give credit to those guys who, by the way, are still credited on this movie. They're still very much credited as characters created by and all that good stuff.
And they have a new movie coming out later this year called
Heretic. Yeah, Heretic.
A24. Yeah.
Tons of buzz around the trailer for that just dropped. So those guys are great. I met, I believe it was Brian Woods at a convention, not a convention, at a festival, and he and I sat down by the river and had a wonderful talk for like an hour. He's a really cool guy. Really like those people. They deserve all the success they're getting. But I do think it does help that Krasinski was an established star who had this humongous hit. You got to remember, it was like a low budget, like made for like, I don't know, 10 or 12 million bucks and made almost $500 million. Crazy success. So the fact that he was at the center of that, he could foster it. He could kind of look over it and keep the quality control going. And that quality control has bled right over into part 3. Part 3s have no business being this good. They don't. But it's probably because John Krasinski, with a fine-tooth comb, said, hey, let's get Jeff Nichols. And then it didn't really work out with Jeff Nichols. Hey, let's get Michael Sarnowski because he just made one of the best movies I've ever seen. I guarantee you right now, that pig is a humongous reason why they chose Michael Sarnowski. He didn't just have a good pitch. They saw his movie and they said, oh my God, this guy's an incredible storyteller. We got to have him. They didn't just pick anybody. They picked a real good storyteller and they brought him in. That's huge. And there it is worth giving Krasinski credit for that.
And I think also, even with Jeff Nichols, even though it didn't work out, like you also mentioned, I forgot to mention he did Loving, which was a massive hit for him, massive award-winning film for him. But two directors have very unique visions, and you got to imagine Krasinski saw something in Mud or he saw something in Loving and said, I want to work with this. And that didn't work out. They creative differences, whatever the fuck that ends up meaning. But then he saw Pig. He had to see Pig. And he's like, oh, shit, I want to work with this guy. So these are the little things that I'm sure John Krasinski's bringing to this universe, along with the storytelling, along with having a creative enough control to tell the studio, fuck off. We're not bringing in the army. We're not bringing in the negotiating table. We're not going to explain where the aliens came from. And that's how we get A Quiet Place day one. So let's move on to our next category, and that is Best Scare. Because I know we talked a lot about characters and story and heartfelt moments and great characters. People are like, where the fuck's the horror? Here's your horror. So
lots of it.
What is your best scare in this movie? It's so funny. There's two moments in particular that really got us. You got one, I got the other, but yours cracks me up because this is a good one.
Yeah, this was one that really was just super unexpected, so it was a proper jump scare for me. Her cat, I forget the name of her cat. Do you remember it?
Frodo. Yeah, it was Frodo.
Yeah, that's right, Frodo. Yeah, Frodo is a typical cat. You can't really hold them down, which that's very reflective actually of her character, Samira's character. Like she's very much like a cat. It's like, you're not telling me where to go. I'm a cat. I go where the fuck I want to go. So during this apocalypse, Frodo has the habit of just fucking wandering off a lot as best he can. And at one point he's like, you know what? I'm fucking parched, man. We've been running for like, I don't know, the last hour or so. And he just goes right up to this flooded subway stairwell and starts having a drink. And you're like, okay, what's going to happen? And there's a lot of background behind him and you're kind of freaking out and you're like, are one of those things going to come up behind him? No, right in front of him in the foreground of this image is our man. What's his name? What's the name of the character?
Oh, Eric,
played by Joseph Quinn. Eric pops up out of the subway. He and I was like, whoa, holy shit. I did not think a guy was coming right out from below us, because if you know enough about the lore of Quiet Place, they don't survive submerged in water. So I never guess an alien's coming up from under the water. So when Eric comes up from under the water, I was like, whoa, shit, holy shit.
Well, they shot it really well, too. The cinematographer, the way they shot it from basically the point of view from the water. So you're kind of looking up at the cat and you see the background. And you see things moving behind the cat and you're like, are they going to kill the fucking cat? Like, and by the way, to be fair, they never killed the cat, which as an animal lover, I'm not a cat guy, I'm a dog guy, but even I was like, please don't kill the cat, and they never did. So Good job. That Sarnowski also gets more points for telling me they didn't kill the cat. But they're shooting it from a point of view of the water. You're looking up at the cat and you're thinking, holy shit, these things are going to come down and descend upon the cat. And then out of nowhere, Eric pops out of the water. You're like, oh, fuck. So it's a very surprising jump scare because you really don't see it coming. My girlfriend jumped about 4 feet out of her seat when that happened. It's hilarious. That one got me too, though. It did get me too. I got to jump a little bit too. So the other one, and these are the moments when I like seeing a film in a theater with a crowd. I'm not kidding you. When this scene happened, no less than 10 people sitting within vicinity of us all went, "Oh Jesus!" Everybody said the same thing. They went, "Oh Jesus!" There's a scene where Lupita Nyong'o's character, they get back to her apartment in Harlem and they take a nap, they fall asleep, and she has a dream. And she wakes up and she sees New York as it used to be. She sees her house as it used to be before she had cancer, before she got sick, whatever. And then out of nowhere, one of the fucking creatures comes right to the window and like latches onto the window and like screeches on the window. Like it's a very silent scene, but it's like old, like looks like New York used to look. You're like, what's going on? Flashback? What's going on?
Flash forward? What's happening?
Yeah. And then this creature comes out of nowhere and smacks the thing, and you're back in reality, and you realize it's not there. It was her dreaming about it. But when that creature hit the window, every single person in my theater went, "Oh, Jesus."
That's an "Oh, Jesus" moment. That's some scary shit. And it's a great bit of misdirection, because really what it's about in that moment, right before that, like she was not knocked out, but I think she had gotten to the point of exhaustion. She kind of like almost passed out. Like you had to lay her down. Again, remember, she's dying of cancer. So they lay her down, and then she wakes up, and you think, from her perspective, you're just seeing like cars going by, people riding bicycles, the sun is shining, things look nice. You're just in that moment, you're sort of like, what's happening right now? Like, did she wake up like many weeks later? Like, was she in a coma? And then she's waking up and like, the story's not established enough at this point. And then that thing comes right at your face and whoa, shit. And then she snaps out of it, and the world is gray and dark and bleak again. And she looks out the window. New York is still in shambles. In that moment, she was just having a dream of peace, of the way things used to be. Again, artsy fartsy shit. Sarnofsky doing his Sarnofsky thing, making me real happy. But that scare was fucking legit.
Yeah, and to quote every single person in my theater, "Oh, Jesus."
Oh, Jesus.
It was like a weird, like crowd hypnosis. Everyone said at the exact same time. It was hilarious. Let's move on to our next category, and that is Best Scene Escaping an Alien. And this is great because we talked a lot about, there is great horror in this movie. We talk so much about everything else because it's kind of hard to talk about the horror when it's, aliens just chasing you to the movie. But there are some incredible scenes of aliens chasing people to this movie. So, Patrick, what was your favorite scene escaping an alien?
Yes, Damon, this is where all the horror comes from, is basically just running from these terrible, terrible beasts in the loudest city in America, possibly the world. And there are many chase sequences, but one got me so good, and that was the subway sequence. First of all, the subways are very much flooded, like from all the chaos and stuff that's happening, from the bridges being blown out and all that stuff. And by the way, all you need is heavy rain to flood the subways. It doesn't take much. So in this case, the subways are very flooded. That is one way that they escape. They have no idea if they're going to be safe down there. They get down there, and that's it's a great kind of like clocking up of tension, because they're obviously they're in the dark. She's got the cat with her in the water. We all know cats love water. No, they don't. And Eric is starting to panic, and she's trying to calm him down. She's trying to keep him like calm down. She brings him in close. She's trying to get him quiet. Like you can see him. He's about to lose control. He's about to start screaming and hyperventilating and shit. He really can't deal with this. The water's probably freezing, and they get to this one point, and they pass, and this hole above them in the dry, not in the wet, is one of those fucking aliens. And God, they look fucking nasty. They're just nasty looking aliens. And they kind of try to roll by it, and they've got kind of loud rolling water to kind of help cover their tracks, but it doesn't feel safe. And he makes just enough noise to fucking wake that thing up. And then it's fucking on. It jumps down and it goes looking for them. And they basically have to escape it completely submerged. And it's such a fucking pucker factor moment. It's one of those, it's a 10 on the pucker scale, because they are fighting for their lives. They are underwater. They're being chased by a terrible beast. And then eventually that beast is going to succumb to the water, because it doesn't know that it can't survive in water, but it's damn sure trying to kill them. And it gets as close as it possibly can. And it just trying to escape it nearly kills them in the process.
Yeah, it's a really, that might be, in terms of the action sequences, and there's quite a few good ones, but that might be the best overall action sequence in the movie. There's also a great one when they're in the office building, which is teased in the trailer, when they're trying to get through one of the revolving doors. They have to push it open, and then you see all the fucking aliens coming down on top of this building, and they're running for their lives. That's actually where they go down into the subway to get away from everything. So that leading into that's actually a really great scene as well. So for me, this is my fucked up mind, Patrick, at work. So this entire movie you're talking about, this movie is really is a story, a harrowing story about two good people surviving the apocalypse together. You know, you have some doubts about Samira early on, only because she's kind of like telling Eric, you know, fuck off. But, you know, she eventually comes around and saves him. And then they save each other, as I've already said. But at the end of the movie, Samira knows she's dying, and she sees this boat leaving the harbor, and she knows the only way they're going to get out of there is for Eric to make a run for it and for her to distract and bring these aliens back after her, because they're all huddled down on the beach because they can't get in the water. So they're just like stalking this boat, knowing they can't get to it. But that means it's blocking Eric from getting to the pier. So she's like, run, save yourself, and basically tells him to go, and she runs the other direction. She grabs a fucking tire iron and starts smashing windows, turn on car alarms, and all the creatures come all from the beach and come running after her, and that's Eric's cue to run for it. He has the cat in his arms, and he's fucking making a break for the pier. He gets to the end of the pier. The things have noticed him by this point. They start coming after him. And there was a moment in my sick fucking twisted brain where I'm like, he might not make it. They're going to kill this fucking guy. Because I was like, that would be a dour ending. Like, that would be kind of a Quiet Place-ish ending. Like, yes, I know the family survived. John Krasinski didn't. And this, as you said, kind of had a bit of a parallel to that with Lupita Nyong'o's character sacrificing herself for Eric. But there was a part of my fucked up brain where I was like, they're going to fucking kill him, aren't they? They're going to catch this fucker coming off the pier. Because it was so close. He jumps off the pier, and I'm like, they're going to snatch him back. And that's going to be how the movie ends. Djimon Hounsou's character. And the reason I thought that is because you mentioned Djimon Hounsou is still around.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't see Joseph Quinn. So I'm like, maybe this fucking guy doesn't make it.
Yeah,
he does.
Right.
He does. He makes it. But in my sick twisted head, I'm like, maybe they're going to fucking get him. So that was my favorite harrowing sequence, because in just for a split second, I was like, they're going to kill this fucking guy. He's not going to make it. And he does. But
oh my God. I was like, he's done. He's totally done. But, and then at the same time, you're like, oh, but Lupita's going to die. They both make it out of the scene.
Yeah.
The optimism of Sarnowski to say, nope, they're still going to make it. Right. Like, and it's not a Hollywood ending. Like, I don't know how, like, and actually, I think that is the benefit of having the other movies ahead of time, is that you know that Quinn is not going to make it to A Quiet Place Part 2. You know that's not coming, or at least you know that he ventured off somewhere else or whatever. Djimon Hounsou makes it to Part 2, but we don't ever meet Joseph Quinn again, but we just know he got off the island. And then he's like, yeah, I could kill Lupita Nyong'o here, but why do that? Instead, what he does is later on, once she knows he's on his way, she goes back to her neighborhood. It's nice and quiet. She's enjoying the city out there, and she goes out on her own terms completely, which I love that. And again, he was like, nope, this character's plan was to go out on her own terms. I'm going to give her that. She's not just going to have to sacrifice herself. She's not doing that. She's saying, okay, when I'm done, I'll be done.
She plugs in her iPod Nano, which for some of the younger audience out there, probably, what the fuck's an iPod Nano? She plugs in her iPod Nano into a charging port, and she brings along with her, it's like a little boombox. She has her headphones plugged into it. She's walking along the streets in dead silence, just listening, enjoying her music. She stops at one point. She's like, yeah, this seems like a good spot. Pulls out the headphones, so the speaker starts making sound. Then you see all the creatures start jumping around her, and that's how the movie ends. Because you know she dies in that moment. She's doing it of her own volition. She's doing it of her own choosing in that moment. She's like, all right, good spot. I feel good about where I've gone, what I've done. He had made it out. Eric made it out. All right, this is a good spot. Pulls out the cord, and that's the end of the movie. It's very beautiful, very poetic. And again, she's a poet in the movie, but that's how it ends, is her basically saying, okay, I'm good. And then you see all the creatures come behind her, and obviously you don't see her get taken out, but you know she gets taken out. So yeah, it's great. It's brilliant. So next category is going to be remake, sequel, or leave it alone. Now this is a little easier for us because we already kind of know what the answer is, which is they've already done 2 sequels. Well, 1 sequel and a spinoff. I believe they are in works on A Quiet Place Part 3. I don't know how far along they are, but I'm pretty sure John Krasinski is working on A Quiet Place Part 3. So we kind of already have our answer, but I guess I'm going to pose this to you in a slightly different way, Patrick. Would you like to see another spinoff? Not necessarily continuing on with Joseph Quinn's character. I'm just saying, like, is there another spinoff of this universe that you could do?
This franchise is very good at small moments in a big moment, right? The big moment is the world is coming to an end because these aliens have come and they're decimating the population. So the movies have always focused on small moments. They could keep doing that. And maybe they can keep doing that if they keep bringing in the right people. But it did feel like when I was done watching this, I was like, how are you going to do better than this, though? That it's not that you can't tell this story again in some other way. And even like the John Krasinski one that's coming, I believe is a sequel to The Family from the first two movies. It's not going to be this. It's just not. It's not going to be this. But I mean, maybe it'll be better. I mean, they must have a dynamite story. Again, John Krasinski is very precious with this franchise, so he must have a story he truly believes in. Of course, I'm going to show up for it. I'm not going to stay home. But I do think like if that's the end, then leave it alone there, please. Like I don't know that you can keep dipping into this well before you end up on the troubled side of things, which is now we're involving the scientists, and now we're involving a way to beat these things. Which I'm guessing there's something in Krasinski's movie that will imply that maybe we can beat these things. And then you have, excuse me, then excuse me, then you might have something like the end of Signs, which is like water kills them, and you're like, really, water? That's the thing. I mean, we already know water kills these things. By the way, they can't swim. But what are you gonna do? Flood the earth? You can't do that. Then you end up in Waterworld, and there's another movie that most people don't want to visit either. So I think you really gotta call it quits. If we kind of said that at the end of part 2, we were like, can you really keep doing this? Like, and I think we did even say like, if you're gonna do a sequel, it can't have anything to do with the family. They did it. It's Quiet Place Day 1. We loved it. We thought it was great. So if Krasinski wants to end the Family's movie and tie everything up and call it a day, I really hope that's the very end.
The only other version, and this is the fucking Eli Roth in me here saying this. We just talked about how they made a really beautiful story in the middle of the apocalypse. The other version, because actually when you think about it, all 3 movies have had a hopeful tone by the end. Even though John Krasinski sacrifices himself, his family is saved. In the 3rd film, she's traveling with a baby. All these things happen. It's harrowing, but she still makes it out alive with her kids intact. It's a very hopeful story in the end. This one, yes, Lupita Nyong'o, but she was doomed before this movie even started, and Joseph Quinn made it out, so it's kind of hopeful. The only version they haven't made yet is the other side, the reality side of human nature, which is every man for himself. And there's a version of the story where it's like, yeah, you made it out, and now you got to deal with like it's like the best parts of The Walking Dead, for as bad as that show got. But the best parts of The Walking Dead is when they realize that like the zombies are awful, but humans are even more awful. Like they're even worse. And that was, that's where things got really good at points in The Walking Dead, is when they realized that, yeah, zombies are terrifying, but humans are fucking awful. And they're capable of just as bad, if not worse. And so I think there's a version they could do that, where it's like the other side of humanity, where you fall into a group where they seem like they're there to save you, but in reality they want to eat you because they're cannibals, because there's no food left. That's the story, maybe. I could see that. That could be a pretty fucking terrifying story. But I think you go too far beyond that, then you are slipping into the, like, let's find an answer. Why did they come here? Let's fight back. And it becomes generic alien invasion story. So that's my one other spinoff of, like, the other side of humanity where there's no hope, which, let's be honest, Patrick, we know that exists. That's probably it. And even though I know there's a 3rd part coming, I'm hesitantly like, all right, there's a 3rd part, but I don't know if you really need to do it. You just made a really good part 3. It's a spinoff, but it's a part 3. Can't we just end it with that? But we'll see. Again, John Krasinski's a good storyteller, so I'll let him tell his story. And if he's got one more piece of the puzzle he wants to put in place to wrap up the family story, the Abbott story, all right, I'll trust it. He did 2 so far, so Let's just hope he can. Let's hope it's more. Let's hope it's more Avengers: Infinity War, Guardians of the Galaxy Part 3, and a whole lot less Godfather 3, a whole lot less Spider-Man
Rise of
3,
Skywalker.
Rise of Skywalker. Let's hope it's a lot less of that. So, yeah.
What you're saying, Damon, is if we're going to spin this movie off, have it be Fede Alvarez's A Quiet Place, where people just get ripped to shreds because that alien Romulus looks bloody and nasty.
That's why I said Eli Roth, like Hostel, fucking Cabin Fever. Like, people are just getting fucking torn apart. Like, yeah, Eli Roth. There's a Quiet Place Hostel. Like, that's where they're gonna go now. You know, that's where, like, we're gonna get really dark here. That I can see. Patrick, we already know the next category. We already said we already know the answer to the next category, but I said, rather than can we survive this horror film, the better question is how long would we survive in this horror film? Or as you said, how would we die?
Yeah, so how do we die,
we know we're not going to make it. Listen to us. We're loud fuckers. We're not making it. I'm not. I know better. I can put on wrestling shoes. I'm still clomping around. I don't care. How are we dying, Patrick?
Well, unlike John Krasinski and Emily Blunt's beautiful family, I'm going to end up yelling at somebody in my house for being too loud or doing something wrong. Like, it's going to go wrong. I got these two little rascals here that don't know how to keep quiet to save their lives, and it will completely screw this family over 100%. So I think the way I'm dying in this is just straight up my family, which, by the way, I think most families in the Quiet Place universe, that's how they go out. Like, by chance, the Krasinskis happen to be way out in the isolated woods. That's how they, or you know, they were in a small town, so they managed to escape to a quiet place, right? Oh, that's interesting title. That's why they got saved. They had a quiet place to run to. My house is not a quiet place. My house is probably the loudest place on my whole block because of these small children. So yeah, we're screwed. We are dead day one.
So I don't know exactly how I would go out. I'm a very loud person in general. I can't really control the tone of my voice. People have told me that for a long time. I project really loudly, and I get it. I understand. I have two dogs. Now, one dog is very quiet, very, very quiet. Like, for the first, 6 months we had the dog, we were afraid, he didn't have a voice box because he never barked. He does now. Our other dog is anything but quiet.
Yapper.
Now, I know there's going to be people out there with children who are going to get offended by me saying this, but I'm saying it because I say this. They are my children. I love my dogs. I know people are going to say there's no way you love your dogs as much as I love my son or daughter. I promise you, I'm not belittling you as a parent. I'm certainly not. I'm just saying I do love my dogs that much. I fucking love my dogs. So I would protect my dogs until I got killed. So yeah, that's me. That's how I would go. The fucking thing would come after my dog and I would be the one to stand. Now, obviously, we're all going to die, but I'm not going down without a fight, which a fight is going to be, they're going to get the big fucking tall fat guy. They're not going to get the dog first. But yeah, that's it. I'm not making it, but I will sacrifice myself for my dogs. I'll do that. I guess that's going out somewhat heroic, kind of blocking them for 8 seconds, so.
Yeah, everybody loves dogs, and for the most part, if you don't, we probably don't like you very much. But truth be told, it's going to be family men like myself and people with dogs. Those are the first people to go, 100%.
Yeah. I'm like I said, this is not can we survive? It's how long will we survive? That's all.
You notice in all three movies, I don't remember in part 2, but definitely in part 1, there's no dogs. And in part 3, no dogs. Because nobody, by the way, nobody wants to see that movie where dogs get hurt by these aliens. And that the truth is that dogs don't have a shot in a Quiet Place universe. They really don't.
Yeah. So I don't even want to think about that. So yeah, I'm just going to peace out right then. Before we get to our last category, Patrick, we are now 3 films deep in the Quiet Place universe, and it felt pretty particular in this moment to go ahead and rank them because we now have enough to rank them. We have 3 films, and we don't know, we know the third story of the Abbott family is in the works, but it's not in production. We don't know a lot of details about it. So for now, we have 3 Quiet Place films. So we should rank them 1, 2, 3. What are their top 3? And I'm going to go first. I'm going to steal your thunder. I'm going to go first here. I'm going to say,
go get it.
In third place, I will go A Quiet Place Part 2. But as I said earlier, I liked it. I did. It just was a film that I watched once and kind of forgot about. That's not a knock. That's just saying it didn't really impact me in that way. Number 2, A Quiet Place. Brilliant film, wholly original, great ending. John Krasinski killed it. Emily Blunt killed it. Great story, and it really set the stage for everything to come, and I loved it. And maybe this is prisoner of the moment. I admit, maybe it is. But my number 1 is A Quiet Place Day One. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was beautiful. I thought they took I thought it's like taking A Quiet Place Part 1, and I know this is sacrilege to say this, kind of improving upon it a little bit, because they drilled down the story a little bit to these two main characters. The way these two characters save each other, it's beautiful. And again, I think John Krasinski's great. Emily Blunt's one of my favorite actors, just to throw that out there.
Yeah,
I really
she's
like
great.
everything she's in. But I've said Lupita Nyong'o, everything she's in is incredible, and she's incredible. Yeah, and again, maybe that'll change if I see it, again and again. Maybe I'll switch around a little bit, but I don't think so. I think I'm comfortable saying A Quiet Place Day One is my favorite of the franchise. What about you?
I'm with you on number 3. It's still part 2 is I'm like you. I didn't really need to revisit it. It didn't bring anything to the table that I was like, oh, you got to see this part again, or you got to get that. And if anything, it pissed me off because Djimon Hounsou doesn't make it out of that movie. That really pissed me off. Like, I remember that about that movie. So I have some beef with that movie. Earlier today, I was talking about it with my brother, and he ranked, just like you, part 3, I believe, as his. Oh no, I'm sorry. He and I both agreed that the original had something very special to it, and so it was our part 1. It was our number 1. But the more I've talked about it tonight, and how special this one is, and how it has impacted me, am I a prisoner of the moment? I might be switching my ranking right now to say the original Quiet Place is part 2, and Day One is now number 1. Because I'm going so deep into how this character work is so super impactful. Maybe down the line I'll go, maybe they're tied for first place, because the original movie is quite novel. It's quite a novel thing, and the way it was presented, I think it was presented really well. But there's nothing I know right now, I know for sure there's nothing I would change about this movie. This is a movie I could show to anyone, and they don't need to be a fan of the franchise. They don't need to be a fan of horror. They're just going to get a great movie. I know that about this movie for sure. Quiet Place, also a great movie, but maybe it's more of just kind of a straight horror movie. Nothing wrong with that. That's why we do this podcast. But Quiet Place Day One was a horror movie and so much more.
And to put it in context, go back to our earlier episodes when we started our Alien review, and I said that, Alien is your all-time favorite film, and I love Alien. It's one of my all-time favorite films. But I said, if you're forcing me to rank it, Aliens is slightly ahead for me, and you're kind of the reverse. You love Aliens, you absolutely adore that movie, but you would put it slightly behind Alien, which is your all-time favorite movie. And I would say for me, Aliens is, just slightly ahead. But I love both, and it's almost like picking your kids. Like, do you really want to pick your kids? Not really, but if you're forcing me to do it, I'd maybe lean Aliens ahead of Alien. It's kind of like that here. Like, I love A Quiet Place, the original. It's a really creative, really inventive movie. But there's just something about this movie that just struck home with me, and when it was over, I was just like I said, I honestly, talking about it here, I'm tearing up. That doesn't happen.
I know.
I can't remember that happening when I watched A Quiet Place Day One. It did here where I'm like, oh, it's beautiful. These two characters, so beautiful. So yeah, that's my ranking. I'll stick with it. Maybe that'll change, and like you said, maybe it'll be 1A and 1B, and I'm fine with that. And again, even part 2, as I said, it's not my favorite, but it's still a good film. It just didn't impact me the way part 1 and Day One did. I guess the best way to say it. So yeah. That's we share the same ranking. Last category, Patrick. I'm going to split this category, and I'm going to say, is it scary And is it beautiful?
And the answer is hell yes to all of it. It is actually a really scary movie. It really is. I don't want to undersell that. It's an edge of your seat, pucker factor of 10. I'm talking about your butthole, fully puckered. It's a tense movie. And it had me gripping the seat. I was literally like, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck. Like, this is really intense. And then when it wasn't intense, it was as beautiful a movie as you can get, especially a franchise movie. Just, I've never seen that. Again, I think Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is the only other franchise movie that was as beautiful. And I cried like a fucking baby at that movie every time I saw it. And I've seen it 5 times. So this is on that level. It's a fucking beautiful movie. And it is a scary movie. So the answer is hell fucking yes.
It's absolutely a scary movie. Again, as I mentioned, we kind of can't sell it well enough because a lot of the scary moments are aliens chasing our characters, and it's hard to really just it would be us doing like the Chris Farley with Paul McCartney. Like, do you remember that moment where the alien jumped down in the building? Do you remember that moment where the alien jumped on the car? That's what this would turn into, and that's a little harder to do in a podcast. But it is scary, but it is also beautiful. And as you said, if you just pluck these characters out and put them in any other end of the world situation where a comet's going to hit Earth, it's fucking Armageddon or fucking Deep Impact. And it's just these two characters surviving these last days on Earth together. It could be beautiful. There's that, what was that one movie? It's totally different, but it kind of reminded me of that. Was it Finding a Friend for the End of the World? Is that what's called? The one with, it's Steve Carell and Keira Knightley.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like that, where they're driving cross country and the world's coming to an end. Finding a Friend for the End of the World. I think that's what it's called. Kind of like that. You could pluck these two characters out and have it in a totally different context, and it would still work, which is remarkable. Then you can also you can all put these into a fucking alien invasion, sound-seeking death squad movie, and it's still really good. So yeah, this is scary, but it's also heartwarming, weirdly to say that. It's also heartbreaking in a lot of ways, because even though you are with Samira knowing she's going to die, it's still sad, because you're like, I love this character, I love her performance, but I know she's going to go. So yeah, it's all those things. And I'll close out on saying this, Patrick, and I said this top, I want to say it again now. Incredibly surprising movie, because I did not go in with any expectations. I went in saying, yeah, we're going to review A Quiet Place day one, but get me to Maxine. Get me to Long Legs. That's what I was looking for. Like I said, this was the appetizer to get to the fucking steak dinner. Or if you're a vegan, this is the appetizer to get to your fucking tofu. Whatever it is you eat. This was I was eating the appetizer to get to the main course. Then suddenly I was like, hold on now. These are some fucking good loaded potato skins I got right here. Holy shit, this is really good.
Yeah. These movies that are coming out that you and I have a lot of anticipation towards, they're going to have a lot to live up to. This is how I'm trying not to oversell this movie. It's really fucking good. See it in a movie theater. I beg of you. I beg of you. This movie is born to see in a big screen, in a room, in a dark room with a bunch of people to experience. And Maxine and Long Legs and even maybe Alien Romulus have a lot to fucking live up to. I guarantee you this movie won't get the same kind of praise at the end of the year unless we're totally wrong and this becomes the smash hit of the year, which I don't foresee that. But those movies, all these horror movies that you and I can't wait to talk about, now have a really high bar to get over. But I hope they at least meet. If they meet it or get near it, we do good. If they surpass it, holy shit, what's the end of the year rankings going to look like? Because this movie, I think, is an automatic going into my rankings right now, and it's going to have to be knocked out by movies better than it.
We might have it the next 3 weeks might be 3 of the greatest weeks in horror, because we know consistently Pearl and X have both been really good, and unless they completely shit the bed with Maxine,
doesn't look like
that's going to be good. And again, I don't even really know wholly what Long Legs is about. I know it's about an FBI agent and a serial killer. Don't know much else about it, but I know it has fucking Nicolas Cage in it, who we love, and Micah Monroe, who we love, and Osgood Perkins, who I've seen a lot of his stuff, and I really like his stuff. And Yeah, so we could be in for a fucking triple feature of just great films in a row. I'm pretty excited over these next 3 weeks. Like I said, I was pleasantly surprised tonight. The next two, I was already pretty excited about. Man, we could be in for like the best 3 weeks of our lives.
It could be a big summer for horror.
Absolutely. All right, folks, that is our episode. We're going to get out of here. Obviously, as always, we appreciate everyone tuning in. Make sure you tune in every week and find us on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and, of course, over on our YouTube channel. You can also find us over on our own website now, rewindofTheLivingDead.com, where you can also find horror news and reviews. I reviewed The Exorcist, the new Russell Crowe movie. That is the exact opposite of A Quiet Place Day 1. And then also we mentioned The Heretic. You can actually watch that trailer right now over on rewindofTheLivingDead.com. So check that out. It's got Hugh Grant and Sophie Thatcher, who I absolutely adore. So looking forward to that one. If you got questions, comments, movies you'd like us to review, hit us up anytime on email, rotlivingdead@gmail.com. That's rotlivingdead@gmail.com. Or find us on social media. You can search anywhere, Twitter/X, Facebook, and or Instagram, and that is Rewind of the Living Dead, and you'll find us over there. And please send us messages. We love hearing from you guys, and we always try to respond. But you can also find us on our own personal social media channels. I am at Damon Martin, and you are?
At Director Patrick.
And a big thank you, as always, for everyone that tunes in. We'll be back next week with another edition of Rewind of the Living Dead. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you then.